Chapter 3271. Instant kill. Zhuowen, my young friend, sorry to keep you waiting. I am Hong Luo, the leader of the Tianluo sect. The middle-aged man with 7 colored eyes greeted Zhuowen warmly as soon as he entered the hall. He then took a seat across from Zhuowen, while Ling Zhua stood silently beside the middle-aged man. Zhuowen went straight to the point after some pleasantries. Hong Luo sect leader, I heard from my friend Ling Zhua that you ventured into the inner area and are quite familiar with it. I wonder if you can tell me the exact location of the inner area and the situation there? Hong Luo laughed and said, the inner area is too dangerous. My young friend Zhuowen, you don't have to consider going. Staying in the Tianluo sect is the best choice. Don't worry, I've always treated my subordinates fairly. Zhuowen's smile faded as he looked at Hong Luo coldly. Hong Luo wanted him to become a member of the Tianluo sect. Was he trying to force him to join the Tianluo sect? Hee, Hong Luo sect leader, you must be joking. I'm not here to join the Tianluo sect. I'm here for the exact location of the inner area of the Phoenix Purgatory. Also, I have something to ask Sect Master. I wonder if there's a human called Mu Chun Shui in your canyon? Zhuowen asked. Hong Luo sect leader's smile faded after Zhuowen's rejection. He said indifferently, it seems that my young friend Zhuowen doesn't know how to appreciate kindness. As for the human, I've heard of her, but she's not in the outer area. It's said that she was imprisoned in the inner area by the great elder of the Phoenix people. When the human was imprisoned in the Phoenix Purgatory, the outer area was in an uproar. However, I'm not too sure about her name. Zhuowen's eyes flashed. It seemed that Mu Qinshui was indeed not in the outer area, but was imprisoned in the inner area. After all, Mu Qinshui was a human. If she was in the outer area of the canyon, it would be easy for the foreign races to identify her. He could easily find out about Mu Qinshui's whereabouts after entering the inner area. However, there was no news about Mu Qinshui. It was obvious that Mu Qinshui was not here. Zhuowen rose to his feet and cupped his fists at Hong Luo. In that case, Hong Luo sect master, please tell me the exact location of the inner chamber. This Zhuo will not let you provide such information for free. Zhuowen knew that Hong Luo was the main divine elixir of the Phoenix Purgatory. He could see that in this undying bird purgatory, divine pills were many times more scarce than in the outside world. Perhaps even in this Tianluo sect, there weren't many reserves of divine pills. I see that fellow Taoist Zhuo is a straightforward person. How about this? If you can take out a bottle of Genesis Divine Elixir, I'll tell you the location of the inner area. Hong Luo said with a smile. Zhuo nodded and tossed out a jade bottle. There are 12 special grade supreme, divine refining demon pills in here. They are mainly used to increase a creator's efficiency in absorbing heavenly Tao energy. Hong Luo took the jade bottle and examined it. He couldn't hide the wild joy in his eyes. Hong Luo sect leader, now it's time to tell me the location of the inner area of the Phoenix Purgatory. Zhuowen said calmly. Hong Luo calmed down and took out a jade slip. He engraved something on it for a while before tossing it to Zhuowen and said, this jade slip contains the location of the inner layer that I have drawn. The inner layer is actually not far from a gorge. Zhuowen took the jade slip and studied it for a while. Then, he cupped his fists at Hong Luo and left the hall. However, in the process of Zhuowen leaving the hall, his mind was completely focused on Hong Luo. Hong Luo's cultivation wasn't low. He should be an early-stage lord of creation. He'd thought that Hong Luo would definitely use the death trap formation in the hall to attack him after seeing him take out the divine elixir. Unfortunately, Hong Luo didn't do anything until Zhuowen was far away. After leaving the Tianluo sect, Zhuowen headed straight for the route drawn in the jade slip. After Zhuowen left the Tianluo sect, Hong Luo and Yingzhuo also left the Tianluo sect. The two of them went in different directions, but the general direction was the same. Hasn't Hong Luo been in seclusion all this time? Why did he come out now and leave the canyon? Not long after Hong Luo left the canyon, 2 figures shot out from the Bloodrock sect and the Jade Sky sect. These 2 alien race experts had auras similar to Hong Luo's. They were both early-stage lords of creation. Moreover, their status in the canyon wasn't low. They were respectively the Blood Rock Sect's master, Shui, and the Jade Sky Sect's master, Huang Quanzi. Let's follow them and take a look. Hong Luo is extremely cunning. If there aren't any benefits, then it's impossible for him to leave the canyon and suffer. Shui's eyes were different from ordinary people. They were filled with terrifying threads of blood, and his voice was terrifyingly low. But we must be careful if we follow them. We must not allow that old fellow Hong Luo to notice us. As soon as Huang Quanzi finished speaking, he vanished on the spot with Shui. In next to no time, Huang Quanzi and Shui arrived at a dangerous gorge. They hid at the entrance of the gorge while their divine senses silently stretched into the gorge. They noticed Hong Luo and Hong Shui were standing within the gorge, and a young man that was very unfamiliar to them was standing before them. The two of them glanced at each other. They knew that the reason Hong Luo and Hong Shui had left was probably because of this young man. They just didn't know why Hong Luo had taken a fancy to this young man. Both of them didn't act rashly and alert the young man, and they lay dormant silently while observing the situation within the gorge. At this moment, within the gorge, Zhuan's expression was extremely gloomy. He looked at Hong Luo and Hong Shui before he said coldly, "Why did you give me a fake map?" Zhuan moved forward according to the route on the jade slip, and he finally arrived at the gorge here. However, he noticed that this gorge was completely empty, and there was no entrance to the inner area at all. So, he knew that Hong Luo had deceived him. After that, Hong Luo led Hong Shui into the gorge. The corners of Hong Shui's mouth were filled with ridicule as he said, "Zhuan, you're so stupid. I really don't know how you survived until now. Could it be that you don't know that wealth shouldn't be exposed? You ought to have many divine pills in your possession, right? Hand over your spirit ring, and I'll leave your corpse intact and give you a swift death." Zhuan started laughing instead and said, "Both of you really want the divine pills in my possession. A man whose heart is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. It's very easy for both of you to choke on your desire to take my spirit ring. You mean you won't hand it over?" Hong Shui licked his lips as he stomped with his right foot, and he flashed toward Zhuan like an arrow that left the bow. At the instant Hong Shui flashed out, Hong Luo moved as well, and he flashed out from another direction to launch a pincer attack against Zhuan. Even though Hong Luo's cultivation was stronger than Zhuan's, he didn't be careless in the slightest, and he utilized his full strength as soon as he attacked. Zhuan's gaze was indifferent as he stood silently on the spot, and he turned a deaf ear to Hong Shui and Hong Luo, who were getting closer and closer. This fellow is courting death. Bloodstone and Huang Quanzi, who were hiding at the entrance of the gorge, were bewildered when they saw Zhuan actually didn't move at all. Swish! When Hong Shui flashed to arrive before Zhuan, the corners of his mouth revealed a savage smile. But in next to no time, his savage smile vanished as a blood-colored sword light pierced through the space between his brows. His expression froze as he directly collapsed to the ground and lost all signs of life. At the instant the blood-colored sword light annihilated Hong Shui, it immediately turned around in midair and flashed towards Hong Luo, who was approaching. Hong Luo was caught off guard, and he was merely able to block 3 moves before the sword light found a flaw and pierced through the space between his brows as well, causing him to become a corpse. Hiss! Hiss! Chapter 3272. Phoenix's Soul. Who's that? He's too terrifying. He annihilated Swan with a single move. He's at least a peak lord of creation, right? Could it be that he's an expert from the inner area? Bloodstone was horrified, and he hurriedly withdrew his divine sense and spoke with a trembling voice. Huang Quanzi was terrified to the point of withdrawing his divine sense as well. The scene from before was too shocking. Zhuan hadn't moved at all, yet Hong Shui and Swan had been annihilated. Although the two of them thought highly of themselves, they were at most on par with Hong Luo. If they were to face this young man, they knew that their outcome would be no different than Swan's. Let's leave quickly. We'll be in trouble if this senior notices us. Huang Quanzi spoke in a low voice. Bloodstone hurriedly nodded, so they intended to leave the gorge silently. But in next to no time, they noticed that there was an unusual force obstructing them from behind. They turned around and noticed to their shock that Zhuowen was standing behind them with a grin on his face as he gazed at them. "Senior, we didn't mean to offend you. We just happened to pass by here." Bloodstone and Huang Quanzi knelt on the ground with a thump. They were very sensible and knew that with Zhuowen's strength, they would be courting death if they fled now, so the only way was to beg for mercy. "The two of you are probably the masters of the Bloodstone sect and Jade Fall sect, right? Moreover, you probably followed Swan and Hongzhou here." Zhuowen smiled faintly. Bloodstone and Huang Quanzi felt their scalps go numb, and they sighed dejectedly in the end. "Senior is right. We are indeed the masters of the Bloodstone sect and Jade Fall sect, and we followed Swan here. However, we didn't know about Senior beforehand, so we didn't join forces with Swan to deal with Senior." Zhuowen looked indifferently at Bloodstone and Huang Quanzi and said, "Get up. I don't intend to deal with the two of you. I just want to ask you about the route to the inner area." Bloodstone and Huang Quanzi heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts, and then they hurriedly withdrew jade slips from their spirit rings and fought to pass them to Zhuowen. "Senior, this jade slip of mine has a very detailed map of the route. You can't go wrong with using it." Bloodstone smiled flatteringly and handed the jade slip to Zhuowen. "Senior, the Bloodstone is flawed. In my jade slip, most of the areas of the Undying Bird Purgatory are recorded. It could be considered the most detailed map. Use mine," Huang Quanzi said fawningly. Zhuowen put away their jade slips and looked through them one by one. He found that the maps in their jade slips were almost the same, but the map in Yellow Spring Z's jade slip was slightly more complete. After Zhuowen chose Huang Quanzi's jade slip, he greeted the two and disappeared in a stream of light. Seeing Zhuowen leave, Huang Quanzi and Bloodstone let out a sigh of relief. Zhuowen gave them too much pressure. "Looks like this senior isn't a prisoner from the inner layer. It's very likely that he's a prisoner that the Phoenix people have just captured. Otherwise, it's impossible that he doesn't even know where the inner layer is," Bloodstone guessed. Huang Quanzi nodded and said, "Between the outer layer and the inner layer is the soul of the Undying Bird. That's a terrifying existence that can even kill Lord Tong Tian. If this senior wants to enter the inner layer, I'm afraid it'll be very difficult, and he might even die." Bloodstone's eyes flickered, and he suddenly suggested, "Huang Quanzi, why don't we follow him and take a look? If this senior really dies to the soul of the Undying Bird, then his spirit ring will be ownerless, right?" Huang Quanzi's eyes lit up. Bloodstone was right. Zhuowen was so powerful that he must have a lot of good things on him. This could be seen from the fact that Hong Luo was secretly following him. Although the two of them were no match for Zhuowen, they could still take advantage of him. But if this senior finds out that we're following him, won't he be furious and kill us? Bloodstone was still worried. Huang Quanzi said in a low voice, "Wealth comes from danger. If we follow him from afar, no matter how powerful he is, he won't be able to find us. Moreover, if we're far enough away, even if he finds us, we'll still have time to escape." Bloodstone nodded when he heard that. He was already tempted. After the two of them finished their discussion, they rushed toward the entrance of the inner layer together. However, the two of them were very slow. They deliberately slowed down in order to put enough distance between them and Zhuowen. In the end, the two of them stopped behind a mountain peak that was close to 10,000 meters away from the entrance of the inner layer. They saw that Zhuowen had stopped at the entrance of the inner layer. Zhuowen had already noticed Huang Quanzi and Bloodstone who were following him, but he didn't pay attention to them. Bloodstone and Huang Quanzi's cultivation levels were too low, and they posed no threat to him at all. He didn't care about these two small fries at all. At this moment, Zhuowen's entire attention was focused on the huge abyss in front of him, which was like a natural chasm. The abyss was extremely deep, and it was hundreds of meters wide. In the abyss, there were black flames that were much more intense than the surroundings. Before Zhuowen even got close to the abyss, he felt a deep chill coming from the flames in the abyss. His body spontaneously combusted, and his skin began to become charred, distorted, and deformed. If it weren't for his strong recovery ability, his body might have already collapsed. Zhuowen used the profound creation mysterious light to wrap around his body. Only then was he able to block the powerful corrosion of the black flames. Zhuowen came to the edge of the abyss and looked across it. There he saw a deep path. On both sides of the path, there were red flames burning, forming a sharp contrast with the black flames in the abyss. Zhuowen knew that the flames should be the phoenix fire. Behind the undying bird's soul, it opened up a path that even the undying bird's soul didn't dare to approach. As long as he crossed the abyss, he would be safe. Just as Zhuowen was about to step out with his right foot, a sense of danger rose in his heart, and he quickly retreated. In the abyss, a black fire python swept out and rushed toward Zhuowen at an extremely tricky angle. Zhuowen snorted coldly, took out the thunderfire sword, and stood at the fire python's 7 inches away. The fire python collapsed with a bang. Whoosh! Whoosh! At the same time, an extremely large number of fire pythons swept out of the abyss. The pitch-black flames burned on the surface of the fire pythons, mysterious and deep. Zhuowen took a step forward, and the purple river swept out from the void and gathered around him. Under the power of the purple river, Zhuowen's figure constantly flashed in the air, and his speed was extremely fast, dodging more and more fire pythons around him. And every time Zhuowen leaped, the thunderfire sword, with terrifying thunder and fire energy, accurately stabbed the fire pythons 7 inches away. In just 50 breaths of time, the numerous fire pythons that swept out of the abyss were all destroyed by Zhuowen's sword. Zhuowen slowly landed on the ground and looked at the abyss in front of him with a serious gaze. He had a feeling that an extremely vast and cold force was sweeping up from the depths of the abyss at an extremely fast speed. Rumble! Suddenly, the cliffs on both sides of the abyss collapsed, and a huge black shadow swept straight into the sky, stopping thousands of feet above the ground. It spread its wings and flew high, and countless flames swept across the sky, creating a terrifying and spectacular black sea of fire. Zhuowen slowly raised his head and looked at the sky, at the black shadow that covered the sun. It was a huge bird that was burning with black flames, and its sharp eyes were filled with deep black. Zhuowen knew that this should be the undying bird's soul. Bang! 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 The undying bird's soul's pressure was extremely terrifying, and the wasteland within a radius of millions of miles was swept by this pressure, spreading terrifying dust and wind. Chapter 3273. Unbelievable. It's the soul of the undying bird. How terrifying. Behind a mountain peak in the distance, Shueshi and Huangquanzi were almost blown away by the storm caused by the soul of the undying bird. After they barely managed to stabilize themselves, their eyes were filled with shock as they felt that it was unbelievable. This senior is finished. He's no match for the soul of the undying bird. Bloodstone and Huangquanzi shook their heads inwardly. They didn't think that Zhuowen could really break through the soul of the undying bird and enter the inner layer. Everyone in the outer layer knew that as long as they could break through the soul of the undying bird and reach the other side, they could enter the inner layer. The prisoners in the inner layer also knew that as long as they could break through the soul of the undying bird, they could leave this damned place. However, countless prisoners in the inner layer had tried to leave over the years, but they had all died at the hands of the soul of the undying bird. Among them were many Master of Heaven experts. In the eyes of Bloodstone and Huangquanzi, although Zhuowen was powerful and had killed Hung Luo, he was at most a peak master of creation. Facing the soul of the undying bird, he was simply courting death. When the soul of the undying bird reached the highest point in the sky, Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He kicked off with his right foot, and a long purple river circled around him. His figure flickered in the air like a ghost. As his figure flickered, the wings of the undying bird's soul suddenly spread out. Suddenly, black flames swept out from the wings of the undying bird's soul and fell down. Zhuan was too fast. He quickly dodged the falling black flames. The energy of the black flames had condensed to a terrifying degree. When they landed on the ground, they blasted it into nothingness and fine powder. As Zhuan dodged, he summoned the Yama ghost diagram. Thick black fog swirled out. Zhuan pointed forward with his right hand. The first layer of the Yama ghost diagram opened, and dozens of ghost chains swept out. The ghost chains were extremely fast. They swept out in all directions and surrounded the soul of the undying bird. With a whoosh, the soul of the undying bird was completely trapped. The undying bird let out a furious howl. It actually felt intense pain from the ghost chains. It was so painful that it felt as if its soul was being stabbed by thousands of blades. It wanted to break free, but found that the ghost chains were getting tighter and tighter. It was impossible for it to break free. Zhuan endured the pain of the ghost chain's backlash. He knew that the ghost chain was a powerful method to deal with the soul. The soul of the undying bird did in translation. The soul of the undying bird did in the body. Only its soul was its soul. However, he also knew the soul of the undying bird was the ghost chains. It was the undying bird was the ghost bird. Therefore, he did not hesitate to open the second layer of a Yama ghost diagram. Four ferocious-looking evil spirits let out ear-piercing howls and rushed out toward the soul of the undying bird above. Boom, boom, boom. The soul of the undying bird was shocked and angry. It kept resisting, but under the restraint of the ghost chains, its strength was reduced to less than 10%. It was suppressed by the roar. Zhuan stopped on a broken stone and floated in the air. His face was pale, and his forehead was covered with cold sweat. He looked at the soul of the undying bird. The soul of the undying bird is really tenacious. It's trapped by the ghost faces and the roar. It's just at a disadvantage. Zhuan took a deep breath and took out the Ho-E godly bow and Ho-E godly arrow from the macro world. He pulled the bowstring to a half moon. A terrifying killing intent filled the whole space. The soul of the undying bird also felt the terrifying killing intent. It roared in fear and began to struggle violently. Terrifying black flames burst out like a chain explosion. It was extremely terrifying. Qi, Mei, Wang, and Liang, the four evil spirits, were sent flying by the terrifying black flames. They retreated continuously, all of them suffering from injuries. However, the roar didn't care about their injuries at all. They pounced crazily and attacked the soul of the undying bird. They forcibly stalled the soul of the undying bird. Zhuan hesitated for a while. Then, he pulled the bowstring to 2/3. The power of the Ho-E godly arrow immediately increased by 100 times. After the blood of the golden crow was wiped off, the Ho-E godly bow's potential was fully unleashed. It was very difficult for Zhuan to pull the bowstring to a full moon. 2/3 was his limit. Whoosh! The Ho-E godly arrow left the bowstring and tore through the air with a deafening explosion. It finally rushed into the soul of the undying bird. Bang! 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 The soul of the undying bird let out a deafening cry. The terrifying power of the Ho-E godly arrow created a terrifying explosion vortex on the soul of the undying bird. The soul of the undying bird struggled violently. The ghost chain on its body shook violently. Zhuan spat out a mouthful of blood. The ghost chain was related to his soul. When the ghost chain was damaged, his soul would naturally be affected accordingly. However, Zhuan could clearly see that the soul of the undying bird was growing dimmer and dimmer. Its aura was rapidly weakening. He knew that the Ho-E godly arrow had taken effect. He hurriedly swallowed 2 divine pills, one for healing and one for repairing the soul. Then, he took out 3 more Ho-E godly arrows. These were the other 3 Ho-E godly arrows he had found in the Eldritch Heaven realm. Zhuan knocked the 3 Ho-E godly arrows on the bowstring and pulled the bowstring to 2/3 again. Whoosh! 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 The 3 arrows shot out at the same time. They turned into 3 streaks of blood-red light. With monstrous killing intent, they blasted into the soul of the undying bird. These 3 godly arrows were stained with the golden crow's blood. Therefore, they were much weaker than the first godly arrow. However, when the 3 godly arrows were combined, they were indeed more powerful than the first godly arrow. The soul of the undying bird let out a weak cry. After being pierced by the 3 godly arrows, its enormous body was directly torn to pieces. Rumble. Just as the soul of the undying bird was about to collapse, it suddenly exploded. The ghost chains that surrounded him were affected by the terrifying, explosive energy and were directly shattered. Chi Mei Wang smashed into the ground from midair. Her body was burning with deep black flames, as if she wanted to burn Chi Mei Wang into nothingness. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was unnaturally pale. Zhuowen hurriedly took out the Yama ghost diagram. He collected the shattered ghost chain, demons and monsters, and the 4 godly arrows that were scattered in the distance. With a flash, he rushed through the abyss in front of him and entered the blazing great path. Outside the mountain in the distance, Huang, Quanzi, and Bloodstone were completely stunned. The battle just now had happened too quickly. The soul of the undying bird had only used 1 move before it was killed by Zhuowen. This was simply too shocking. This senior, he killed the soul of the undying bird? Bloodstone, punch me and see if I'm dreaming. Huang Quanzi muttered to himself. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Chapter 3274. Inside the phoenix blood pool, the blazing red path was wide and deep, as if it had no end. The moment Zhuowen entered the path, he immediately felt the power of the flames. They were no weaker than the black flames outside. In fact, they were even stronger. Zhuowen did not continue forward. Instead, he found a rather concealed pile of rocks by the side of the road. He hid in the pile of rocks and then set up a powerful concealment formation and defensive formation there. After the defensive array was set up, the terrifying fiery red flames in the surroundings were all blocked by the defensive array. Zhuowen also let out a soft sigh of relief. Splat! At this moment, Zhuowen's face was as pale as a dying patient. His sea of consciousness was like a bucket of paste. The side effects of the Yama demon portrait were too terrifying. At this moment, Zhuowen had a splitting headache, and he wanted to hit the ground with his head. Red blood was flowing out of his 7 orifices. Forcefully enduring the intense discomfort in his sea of consciousness, Zhuowen summoned the Great World. He turned the Great World into dust and attached it to the surface of a rock. Then, he entered the Great World. In the Great World, on a small island in the center of the lake, Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia silently guarded the Phoenix blood pool. They sat cross-legged and meditated. The holy maiden of the Phoenix people was standing by the door of the pavilion. Her beautiful eyes flickered, and she revealed a hesitant expression. She really wanted to snatch the Phoenix blood pool, but she didn't have even a tenth of her strength left. The 99 Phoenix body's bloodline had been completely extracted by Zhuowen. Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia were both very powerful. They were both peak god of creation stage powerhouses. In addition, not far from the small island in the center of the lake, the 3 divine swords led by the Thunderfire sword were also nearby. If she made any strange moves, she was very clear that she would die a miserable death. With a soft sigh, the holy maiden of the Phoenix people gave up on the idea of snatching the pool. This idea was completely unrealistic to her. Whoosh! Suddenly, a streak of light flew over from afar and landed on the small island in the center of the lake. Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia sensed something amiss. They opened their eyes and stood up vigilantly. However, when they saw that the person who came was Zhuowen, their gazes softened a lot, but they soon revealed a look of bewilderment. This was because Zhuowen was in a very bad state. He was bleeding from his 7 orifices, and his face was as pale as a ghost. He looked like a vengeful ghost. Lord Zhuo, what happened to you? Gui Ling was alarmed. Zhuowen's current state was simply too terrifying. He could not help but probe. Zhuan did not pay any attention to Gui Ling and Yin Wuxia. Instead, he leaped into the Phoenix blood pool and said solemnly, "The two of you stand guard for me in the Phoenix blood pool." With that, Zhuan took out more than 10 bottles of healing divine pills and absorbed the Phoenix blood energy in the Phoenix blood pool. To the Phoenix people, the Phoenix blood pool was a pool that preserved the divine soul. The energy within the Phoenix blood pool had a powerful healing effect on the divine soul. Therefore, after Zhuan's divine soul was damaged, the first thing he thought of was the Phoenix blood pool. As soon as he entered the Phoenix blood pool, Zhuan immediately sensed a mysterious energy within the Phoenix blood pool. It gathered in his sea of knowledge and began to repair Zhuan's shattered sea of knowledge and divine soul. A comfortable feeling rushed from Zhuan's tailbone to his head. It was so comfortable that Zhuan almost cried out. Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia's eyes were full of solemnity. They were well aware of Zhuan's strength. Even a ski-reach expert wouldn't be able to easily injure Zhuan. But now, Zhuan was so weak that he was almost on the verge of death. They really didn't know what kind of abnormal existence Zhuan's opponent was. Although they were shocked, the two of them still dutifully guarded the Phoenix blood pool. They also glared fiercely at the Phoenix people's saintess, who was standing by the door of the pavilion with a strong sense of warning in their eyes. The Phoenix people's saintess felt a lot more relaxed. When she saw that Zhuan was seriously injured, she knew that he must have been injured by the Phoenix people. Originally, when Zhuan destroyed the Phoenix people's ancestral shrine and the Phoenix blood pool, the Phoenix people's saintess thought that Zhuan was so strong that no one in the Phoenix people could match him. But now, it seemed that she had thought too much. Zhuan was strong, but there was a limit to his strength. He wasn't a match for the true experts of the Phoenix people. The Phoenix people's saintess felt a little regretful. If Zhuan was killed now, it would be great. Then, she could be discovered by the experts of the Phoenix people and escape from this great world. Time passed by. Zhuan, who was in the Phoenix blood pool, narrowed his eyes and absorbed the energy of the Phoenix blood pool as if he was drunk. As he continued to absorb the energy of the Phoenix blood pool, Zhuan found that his divine soul was not only repaired, but also strengthened. In addition, the energy of the Phoenix blood pool could be absorbed by the Panga's sacred body and strengthened the latter's physique. His Panga's sacred body had been promoted to the early 7-star level for a long time, but it showed no signs of improvement. He also knew that when the Panga's sacred body was cultivated to such a level, it could only be improved by relying on the power provided by the ancestral sorcery venomous insects, unless it was a very high level of energy. Zhuan was pleasantly surprised that the energy of the Phoenix blood pool could improve his Pangu sacred body. Zhuan also knew the origin of the Phoenix blood pool. The pool contained the essence and blood of the divine beast, the Phoenix. In ancient times, the Phoenix was an extremely powerful existence. Although it was not as famous as the 12 ancestral sorcerers, it was very difficult for the 12 ancestral sorcerers to defeat the Phoenix in terms of combat strength and bloodline. It was easy to imagine how precious and powerful the essence and blood of such a powerful existence was. It was not surprising that it could improve the level of Zhuan's Panga's sacred body. 10 days later, the Phoenix blood pool, which was originally blood red, became as clear as water. Almost all of the Phoenix blood in the Phoenix blood pool had been absorbed by Zhuan. Zhuan slowly opened his eyes and jumped out of the pool. His eyes were full of excitement. After absorbing the entire Phoenix blood pool, Zhuan found that his Pangu sacred body had loosened. He found that his Pangu sacred body was not far from the middle 7-star level. Congratulations, Lord Zhua. Your injuries are as good as new, and your cultivation has improved. Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia hurriedly bowed. The moment Zhuan jumped out of the Phoenix blood pool, the two of them could clearly feel that Zhuan's aura was sharper and stronger than before. You absorbed all the energy of the Phoenix blood pool. Zhuan nodded at Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia. Then, he heard the saintess of the Phoenix people's unfriendly voice from the pavilion door not far away. Zhuan looked coldly at the Phoenix people. His vast aura burst out, and he said indifferently, "What? Saintess, Do you have a problem with that? The saintess of the Phoenix people felt the impact of this powerful aura and could not help but take more than 10 steps back. Her pretty face was pale and bloodless. She quickly lowered her head and did not dare to speak. However, when the saintess of the Phoenix people lowered her head, her eyes were full of resentment. She kept cursing in her heart. When Zhuan left this time, she hoped that he would die tragically in the hands of the Phoenix people. Zhuan no longer paid attention to the saintess of the Phoenix people. He flipped his right hand and took out 2 divine pills. He handed them to Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia and said, "These are Tai Chi energy gathering divine pills. They can help you advance to the Lord of Creation realm. You have done a good job protecting the Phoenix people. These 2 divine pills are your reward." Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia took the divine pills and hurriedly bowed to express their gratitude. Chapter 3275. Snake-faced man when Zhuan left the outside world and appeared in the pile of rocks. He saw a snake-faced man holding a snake-shaped halberd and constantly attacking the defensive array in front of him. When Zhuan appeared in the pile of rocks, the snake-faced man stopped and smiled sinisterly. "The master of the array is really inside. Come out and hand the array to me. I'll only cripple your cultivation and won't take your life." Zhuan narrowed his eyes. The snake-faced man wanted him to hand over the array and cripple his cultivation. This was too arrogant. Although the snake-faced man's cultivation was not bad, he was only a half-step master. In Zhuan's eyes, he was just trash. This kind of trash dared to be arrogant in front of him. It was simply laughable. Seeing that Zhuan did not speak, the snake-faced man said impatiently, "I'll give you one more chance. Get out. Otherwise, after I break the array, you won't even have your life." Zhuan smiled and slowly withdrew the defensive and concealment arrays. This snake-faced man was not simple. He could see through his concealment array and attack his defensive array. Zhuan said indifferently, "You're a prisoner in the inner layer. You don't have the right to know this kind of thing. You're very obedient, so I'll keep my promise. I won't kill you and will only cripple your cultivation." After the snake-faced man finished speaking, he stomped his right foot and shot out like a cannonball. In an instant, he was in front of Zhuan. The snake-faced man laughed sinisterly and quickly stabbed out with the snake-shaped halberd in his hand. In an instant, 4 halberd lights exploded and shot toward Zhuan's limbs. The snake-faced man planned to cripple Zhuan's limbs as soon as he came up. It could be seen how ruthless this person was. Zhuan remained motionless as he punched out with his fist. The 4 halberd lights exploded as Zhuan's fist landed on the snake-faced man's face in an instant. Pucci! The snake-faced man didn't expect that his attack would be destroyed so easily, so he wasn't prepared for Zhuan's punch. A heavy punch landed on the snake-faced man's face. The snake-faced man spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with broken teeth. The snake-faced man heavily smashed onto the ground. His entire body twitched, and his entire face cracked and twisted. Bang! The snake-faced man roared furiously. Just as he was about to stand up, Zhuan ruthlessly stomped on his chest. The powerful force hit the snake-faced man's body, and the snake-faced man's roar came to an abrupt stop, and he spat out another mouthful of blood. The snake-faced man was trembling all over, but his eyes were filled with fear. He had never thought that he would run into a tough opponent. However, this person's aura was clearly only that of a god of creation, yet his power was far superior to his own. He was able to crush him like a weakling. This was far too terrifying. "Now you should answer my question, right?" Zhuan looked down at the snake-faced man beneath his feet, and the killing intent in his eyes was extremely dense. The snake-faced man's body trembled, and he hurriedly replied, "I am indeed a prisoner in the inner layer. 3 days ago, the power of the undying bird soul was suddenly weakened to the extreme. Many powerful beings in the inner layer became restless and came to explore the undying bird's abyss. What was strange was that when they passed through the undying bird's abyss, the undying bird's soul didn't react. Thus, this news spread throughout the inner layer, and all of the prisoners trapped in the inner layer left the inner layer and entered the outer layer. I was also planning to leave the inner layer, but I just so happened to discover the fluctuations of your spell formation, so I tried to attack it. I didn't think that there really would be a spell formation here. Then, as you know, what happened next? The snake-faced man's eyes were filled with hope. He was afraid that Zhuowen would be ruthless and kill him. I asked around in the outer layer. There is a human imprisoned in the inner layer. Do you know this? Zhuowen asked. The snake-faced man hurriedly said, Senior, you are wise. You even know this. There is indeed a human imprisoned in the inner layer, and this human is very powerful. I met this human once, but I didn't dare to provoke him. Zhuowen frowned slightly, feeling that something was wrong. He waved his sleeve and summoned Mu Qinshue's virtual image, and said, Is that human, this woman? The snake-faced man was stunned. He hesitated for a moment and said, Senior, the human expert is not a woman, but a man. He calls himself Crepe Myrtle Star, and he is invincible in the inner layer. No one dares to provoke him. Many of us in the inner layer speculated that Crepe Myrtle Star's strength was enough to break through the protection of the undying bird's soul and leave the inner layer. However, he didn't leave and has been staying in the inner layer. Crepe Myrtle Star hasn't left and is still in the inner layer. Crepe Myrtle Star? Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He was surprised and happy. He was surprised that Mu Qinshuo was not in the undying bird's purgatory, and happy that he met an old friend, Crepe Myrtle Star, here. Take me to Crepe Myrtle Star. Otherwise, you'll die miserably on the spot right now. Zhuowen calmed down and spoke with a cold expression. The snake-faced man hurriedly nodded and bowed. Then, he got up and led Zhuowen to the depths of the flaming avenue. Not long after they walked on the flaming avenue, two figures walked toward them. The two figures were a man and a woman. Their auras were extremely powerful. The man was as strong as a bear and had thick hair on his body. His aura was strong. He was actually an expert at the early stage of Tong Tian Master. The woman was enchanting and charming. Her beautiful cheeks were covered with white snake scales. Her lower body was a snake's tail. Her aura was slightly weaker than the man's, but similar to the snake-faced man, she should also be a half-step Tong Tian Master. When the snake-faced man saw the two men, he was overjoyed and said, Brother, sister-in-law, you still haven't left the inner area? The strong man didn't care about Zhuowen at all. Instead, he looked at the snake-faced man and laughed loudly. We had some things to deal with inside. Now that we're done, we naturally came out. On the other hand, didn't you leave earlier than us? Why did you turn back now? The snake-faced man's face was gloomy. He glanced at Zhuowen behind him and said with a smile, This is my friend. I'm taking my friend to the inner area to broaden his horizons. He hasn't seen the scenery of the inner area yet. The strong man and the snake woman narrowed their eyes and said meaningfully, Since he's your friend, you take him to the inner area first. We'll meet in the outer area when the time comes. The snake-faced man hurriedly agreed. Then he led Zhuowen past the strong man and the snake woman. However, the moment he brushed past Zhuowen, the sturdy man suddenly threw out a punch, aiming for Zhuowen's vital point. Zhuowen sneered coldly in his heart. He did not plan on dodging at all. Instead, at the same time the strong man's fist blasted over, his right hand formed a claw and grabbed at the snake woman. The snake woman clearly did not expect that Zhuowen did not dodge and actually took the initiative to attack her. She was first stunned, then she immediately revealed a cold smile. Her snake tail suddenly swung, slamming onto Zhuowen's hand claw. Unfortunately, Zhuowen was not an ordinary person. He grabbed onto the snake tail and immediately exerted force. The snake woman was directly grabbed by Zhuowen. Immediately, Zhuowen swung, smashing the snake woman's entire body onto the strong man's fist. Crack! The strong man's all-out punch smashed viciously onto the snake woman's chest. The snake woman emitted a shrill scream. Her sternum directly caved in. A mouthful of fresh blood spewed out. The strong man was frightened until he hurriedly pulled back, his expression changing drastically. Chapter 3276. Goodbye. Crepe Myrtle's star lord the burly man was afraid of accidentally injuring the lamia, so he was fearful. Juon caught a loophole, and he suddenly swung the lamia's tail and smashed it into the burly man's chest. The burly man and the lamia screamed at the same time as they were sent flying. Juon, on the other hand, had his hands behind his back. Like an old tree that had taken root, he stood firmly on the spot. A sword light emerged from his body and shot out explosively. This sword light carried with it the energy of thunder and fire that soared into the sky. It flew out and instantly pierced through the space between the brows of the burly man and the lamia. The lamia died on the spot, but the burly man reacted quickly and moved away from the space between his eyebrows. The thunder-fire sword pierced through the man's chest and nailed him to the ground. The snake-faced man was so scared that he sat on the ground, his entire body trembling. He looked at Juon with eyes full of fear, as if he was not looking at Juon himself, but a ferocious and terrifying devil. Juon ignored the snake-faced man and slowly walked to the burly man's side. The burly man's body trembled as he hurriedly begged for mercy. "Sir, I offended you just now. I hope you can be magnanimous and let me go like a fart. There are many people who want to kill me, but I'm basically alive and well now. As for the people who want to kill me, they've all gone to hell. I think you should go there and take a look." Juon's voice was calm. Under the terrified gaze of the burly man, he waved his sleeve and a spiral of strength chi shot out and entered the space between the burly man's eyebrows. The burly man's eyes were wide open as he died, with everlasting regret. Juon shot out a stream of divine fire and burned the corpses of the lamia and the burly man to ashes. He then turned to look at the snake-faced man who was already at loss from fear and said, "Continue leading the way." The snake-faced man was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He scrambled to his feet and hurriedly led the way in front of Juon. This time, the snake-faced man could be said to be much more attentive and flattering. When facing Juon, he was even more respectful and exaggerated than when facing a god. Very quickly, the two of them walked past the blazing path and entered a blood-red cliff. At the bottom of the cliff, there was an open space with bloodstones arranged in an uneven pattern. "My lord, this is where the prisoners in the inner layer live. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign is in the southeast corner. That is the forbidden area of the inner layer. It is where Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign cultivates. None of us dare to disturb such a ruthless person." At the mention of Crepe Myrtle Star, the snake-faced man's face was filled with fear and reverence. Juon and the snake-faced man arrived at the southeast corner of the open space and discovered that there was a deep blood-red cave in the southeast corner. When Juon was about to enter the bloody cave, he immediately sensed that something was wrong. At the entrance of the bloody cave, there were waves of ripples, and soon after, waves of bloody spirals rushed out and bombarded Juon's vital acupoints. With a wave of his sleeve, Juon blocked all the bloody spirals. However, it was not easy for Juon to block them. These bloody spirals were very powerful. They actually broke through the creation mysterious light that covered his body and pierced through his body, leaving behind terrifying bloody holes. Juon hurriedly retreated, and the bloody spiral at the entrance of the cave also disappeared. Juon's gaze was solemn. The bloody spiral that appeared at the entrance of the cave was not formed by some kind of great formation. Instead, it was left behind by some kind of powerful energy at the entrance of the cave. If someone barged into the cave, it would activate this energy to attack the intruder. The terrifying bloody holes on Juon's body gradually healed under his powerful recovery ability, but his expression was somewhat uncertain. The energy at the entrance of the cave was simply too powerful. If he wanted to break through this energy defense, he could naturally do it, but the price he would have to pay was quite high. The snake-faced man looked at Juon in surprise. He knew very well how terrifying the restriction at the entrance of Crepe Myrtle Star's cave was. In the past, there were many experts in the inner layer who wanted to barge in to take a look, but they were all wiped out by the energy at the entrance of the cave. Almost none of them survived. It was because of his precedent that the experts in the inner layer did not dare to barge into Crepe Myrtle Star's cave. After one's injuries recovered, he stood silently at the entrance of the cave. He knew that when he attacked the entrance of the cave, just now, he had already attracted the attention of the people in the cave. He believed that Crepe Myrtle Star would come out soon. "Who is it? How dare you barge into this Star Lord's cave?" A loud voice like a bell came from the depths of the cave. Soon after, the sound of approaching footsteps came from inside the cave. The snake-faced man looked very nervous. He whispered, "My lord, Crepe Myrtle Star is not to be trifled with. He once fought 1 against 3 and killed 3 early-stage, transcending heaven lords. I think we should leave this place." Zhuowen stood quietly on the spot, his eyes like torches as he looked at the entrance of the cave. He turned a deaf ear to the snake-faced man's words. The snake-faced man was a little embarrassed. He wanted to leave, but without Zhuowen's order, he did not dare to. When a familiar figure finally came out of the cave, Zhuowen's eyes lit up. This was a handsome man dressed in purple. His face was angular, and he was extremely handsome. Zhuowen was all too familiar with this man. He was Crepe Myrtle Star, whom he had met in the 8 heavens. Crepe Myrtle Star's aura was very vast and powerful, surpassing that of an early-stage, transcending heaven lord. Zhuowen's eyes were very sharp. Crepe Myrtle Star's cultivation should be at the mid-stage, transcending heaven lord, but his aura far exceeded that of an ordinary mid-stage, transcending heaven lord. He guessed that Crepe Myrtle Star was probably a peak mid-stage, transcending heaven lord. This surprised Zhuowen. When Crepe Myrtle Star was in the 8 heavens, he had not yet attained his Tao. It had only been a few hundred years since he left the 8 heavens. But Crepe Myrtle Star's cultivation had improved so quickly that he had even surpassed Zhuowen. Zhuowen thought that his opportunities were already terrifying enough, but now he realized that compared to Crepe Myrtle Star, his opportunities were probably nothing. Crepe Myrtle Star's aura was very aggressive. He soon saw Zhuowen and the snake-faced man. However, Crepe Myrtle Star's attention was not on the snake-faced man, but on Zhuowen. His gaze was first angry, then puzzled, and finally shocked. "Brother Zhuowen?" Crepe Myrtle Star stared at Zhuowen and could not help but cry out in surprise. However, there was still some uncertainty in his voice. "Brother Crepe Myrtle, after so many years, you still remember me? How rare." Zhuowen replied with a faint smile. Crepe Myrtle Star laughed loudly. With a wave of his sleeve, he expelled the powerful energy that had been set up at the entrance of the cave. He stepped forward and gave Zhuowen a bear hug. Chapter 3277. Reminiscent. Zhuowen smiled and did not explain the aura on his body. Instead, he said, "Brother Ziwei, can I enter your cave and have a chat with you?" Ziwei Star Monarch said warmly, "Of course. And this is your friend." When Crepe Myrtle Star saw the snake-faced man behind Zhuowen, who was still trembling in shock, a look of surprise appeared in his eyes. "Oh, this is the guide I found." Zhuowen turned and said to the snake-faced man, "There's nothing for you to do here. You can leave now." The snake-faced man was startled at first, but then he was overjoyed. He quickly bowed to Zhuowen and thanked him, then fled the place as fast as he could. "Brother Zhuo, you're really soft-hearted. This person should be a prisoner of the inner layer. He didn't bring you here with good intentions. Instead of killing him, you let him escape," Ziwei Star Monarch said in surprise. Zhuowen shook his head and said, "It doesn't matter. This person is just a clown. I don't need to bother with such a person. Brother Ziwei, let's go in and have a chat. There are some things I want to ask you." Ziwei Star Monarch nodded and led Zhuowen into the cave. Before entering, Ziwei Star Monarch waved his sleeve and set up a powerful energy defense at the entrance of the cave. In the depths of the cave was a spacious stone room. There was everything inside, and the decorations were quite luxurious. Ziwei Star Monarch and Zhuowen sat opposite each other at a large table carved from jade. Ziwei Star Monarch took out a bottle of immortal wine from his spirit ring, filled a cup, and brought it to Zhuowen. He said, "Brother Zhuo, I brewed this immortal wine myself. It's called melancholy wine. It's sweet, and has a rich aftertaste. Zhuowen lifted his wine cup as the fragrance of the wine entered his nostrils. An intoxicated look involuntarily appeared in his eyes. He drank in one gulp. It was indeed as Ziwei Star Monarch said. It was sweet and had a rich aftertaste. A faint and wondrous sweet taste spread into his mouth, and his body felt light as a feather, as if he was floating in the sky. Good wine. Zhuowen put down his wine cup and couldn't help but praise. Crepe Myrtle Star chuckled. He picked up the immortal wine again and poured a cup for Zhuowen. Then, he raised the cup and offered a toast to Zhuowen. The two of them toasted each other and were drunk. After 3 rounds of drinks, Zhuowen put down his cup, looked at Purple Star Monarch and said, "Brother Purple Star, I risked my life to cross the Xianmi heavenly domain to the ancient desolate heavenly domain and the Phoenix people to enter the Phoenix purgatory for my wife, Mu Qinxue. I once heard from a saintess of the Phoenix people that my wife, Mu Qinxue, was imprisoned in the Phoenix purgatory. But I entered the outer and inner layers of the Phoenix purgatory, but I didn't find any trace of my wife." Purple Star Monarch put down his cup, and his eyes became serious and hesitant. He sighed and said, "Brother Zhua, when I recognized you, I knew you were here for Mu Qinxue. To tell you the truth, when I was imprisoned in the inner layer, I did see Mu Qinxue. But Mu Qinxue was imprisoned in a very special place. It was neither the outer layer nor the inner layer, but a separate prison above the inner layer. This prison is filled with flames that target the divine soul. Entering that prison is no different from entering the 18 levels of hell. Mu Qinshue's screams can often be heard in the inner layer. Bang! The jade carved table in front of him was destroyed. Purple Star Monarch looked at Zhuowen with a serious gaze. He saw that Zhuowen had only used his right hand to crush the jade table to dust. His strength was beyond Purple Star Monarch's expectations. Zhuowen took a deep breath and said in an apologetic voice, "Brother Purple Star, I'm sorry. I was a bit impulsive. I destroyed your table. What happened after that? Where is Chun Shui imprisoned now?" Purple Star Monarch waved his hand, telling Zhuowen not to mind. He continued, "After that, Mu Qinshui was taken away by the great elder of the Phoenix people. As for where she was taken, I don't know either." Taken away, Zhuowen's pupil shrank. He could not help thinking of what Yuefu had said. The great elder and third elder of the Phoenix people had left the great desolate heaven domain a while ago. As for why the great elder and third elder left, Yuefu did not know either. Zhuowen did not care about this news at all and was pleasantly surprised that the great elder and third elder were not here. It was beneficial for him to break into the Phoenix people. Now it seemed like he had missed out on important information. Zhuowen was a bit dazed. He thought that he would be able to save Mu Qinshui by entering the undying bird purgatory, but now it seemed like he had missed out. But very quickly, Zhuowen adjusted his attitude. At the very least, he now had a clue about Mu Qinshui's whereabouts. As long as he knew where the first and third elders had taken Mu Qinshui, he could follow this clue and find Mu Qinshui. "Brother Purple Star, why did you enter the great desolate heaven domain? Moreover, you were imprisoned in the undying bird purgatory. I remember that you went to the Xianmi heaven domain, right?" Zhuowen looked at the Purple Star Monarch, his eyes full of doubt and curiosity. Back when he was in the Slaughter Heaven domain, when he first heard of the Purple Star Monarch, he was very confused. The Purple Star Monarch actually entered the Slaughter Heaven domain directly, then broke through the Slaughter Heaven domain and entered the Primitive Heaven domain. This was too unbelievable. He did not know how the Purple Star Monarch did it. The Purple Star Monarch hesitated for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "Brother Zhua, you are not an outsider, so I will tell you the truth. Back then, I did go to the Heavenly Moat to cross into the Xianmi Heaven domain, but the Heavenly Moat was too terrifying. I almost died there, but I was lucky. At the moment of danger, I found a hidden ruin. After I entered the ruin, I explored it and found that it was the inheritance left behind by the divine beast, the undying bird. However, the undying bird's inheritance was only half. After I accepted half of the undying bird's inheritance, My cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. Even the aura on my body became less like that of a human and more like that of the undying bird. After I completely accepted the half of the undying bird's inheritance, the other half of the undying bird's inheritance appeared in my mind. It was in the undying bird purgatory of the Phoenix people. An ancient teleportation array appeared in the ruin. I activated the ancient teleportation array and was teleported to the entrance of the secret passage to the great desolate heaven domain. Zhuan's eyes moved, and he asked, "Did you meet a huge black lion at the entrance?" "Yes, Brother Zhua. It seems that you also met that black lion. That black lion called himself the Black King and asked me to gamble with him. I won in the end and obtained the qualification to enter the great desolate heaven domain." Speaking of this, the Purple Star Monarch's eyes were filled with anger. The Black King clearly told me that once I entered the passage, I would immediately reach the great desolate heaven domain. But in the end, under the Black King's instructions, I entered the massacre heavenly domain. Zhuan was speechless. He looked at the Purple Star Monarch with pity. As a victim of the Black King, he could understand the grief and indignation in the Purple Star Monarch's heart. "Brother Purple Star, you are not the only one who was cheated. I was cheated too. Back then, I learned of your whereabouts in the massacre heavenly domain," Zhuan said solemnly. Chapter 3278. Black Gold Door, Brother Crepe Myrtle. That is to say, you entered the undying bird purgatory to find the other half of the undying bird's inheritance? Zhuan asked. Zhuan had a deep impression of the undying bird. The undying bird was also an ancient divine beast. Perhaps it was slightly inferior to the phoenix, but it was definitely not inferior by much. The soul of the undying bird guarding the entrance to the inner layer was actually just a remnant soul of the undying bird. However, it was just a remnant soul. Zhuan had to use all kinds of trump cards to finally destroy the remnant soul. Moreover, he was also seriously injured. He knew very well that if the real undying bird appeared, it would only need one move to destroy him, Zhuan, until nothing was left. Yes, I deliberately committed a crime in Phoenix Blood City and was then caught in the undying bird purgatory. After such a long time of exploration, I basically know the exact location of the other half of the undying bird's inheritance. Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch said confidently, "Brother Crepe Myrtle, since the undying bird's inheritance exists here, the Phoenix people should have already taken it. How could they not have taken it away until now?" Zhuan asked doubtfully. "Brother Zhua, you may not know this, but the undying bird purgatory is suppressing the physical body of the undying bird. The undying bird has the innate ability of being immortal and indestructible. Even the divine beast phoenix, although it defeated the undying bird, it did not have the ability to completely kill the undying bird. It could only suppress its physical body below. The undying bird is suppressed by the phoenix in the undying bird purgatory. If the Phoenix people want to enter the undying bird purgatory, they will easily be devoured by the power of the undying bird. Therefore, it is not that the Phoenix people do not want to seize the undying bird's inheritance, but that no one among the Phoenix people has the ability to go deep into the purgatory. Moreover, I suspect that once the experts of the Phoenix people have the ability to seize the undying bird's inheritance, I think the undying bird will very likely self-destruct and destroy its own inheritance. I've basically been researching how to enter the lowest level of the undying bird purgatory and find the undying bird's body to obtain the other half of the inheritance," Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign said. Upon hearing this, Zhuan nodded. He felt that what Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign said made sense. "Brother Crepe Myrtle, do you have any leads now?" Zhuan asked. Crepe Myrtle Star nodded and said, "I do have some clues. After all, I've obtained half of the Phoenix's inheritance, so I can vaguely sense the other half. When I entered the inner layer for the first time, I created this cave residence on this rock wall, because I sensed that the other half of the inheritance of the undying bird is hidden in the depths of this rock wall. Furthermore, I have indeed discovered a secret door. However, there's actually a very powerful formation outside that secret door. I think it's at least a heavenly ascension grand formation. I bombarded it for a while, but I couldn't break through the defense of the formation. At this point, Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign's eyes revealed a trace of sadness. Although he was strong, he knew nothing about formations. If he wanted to forcefully break through the formation, it would take a very long time. Moreover, the commotion of breaking through the formation was too great. At that time, the entire inner layer would be affected, and all the prisoners in the Undying Bird Purgatory would notice. Not only that, but the Phoenix people outside the Undying Bird Purgatory would also notice the abnormality. This was completely against Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign's wishes. Brother Crepe Myrtle, can you let me take a look at that formation? You know that I'm a divine array master. Maybe I can crack it. Zhuowen said. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign sighed softly and nodded. He led Zhuowen into the depths of the cave residence. In the deepest part of the cave residence, there was a very hidden tunnel. The two of them followed the tunnel and slowly walked down. Soon, the two of them arrived at the end of the tunnel and stopped. What appeared in front of Zhuowen was an even more spacious underground area. At the end of this spacious area, there was a black gold door that was 10 feet tall. The surface of the black gold door emitted a pitch black and golden light. In addition, there was a relief of a huge flaming bird. Zhuowen guessed that this huge bird should be the relief of the Undying Bird. Brother Zhua, you can see it too. This huge black gold door is densely covered with powerful formations and restrictions. Moreover, this black gold door is not an ordinary thing. Its hardness is something I've never seen in my life, Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign said in a deep voice. Although Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign said so, he didn't have any hope that Zhuowen could crack the formation on the surface of the black gold door. When he was in the 8 heavens, he also knew that Zhuowen was proficient in formations. However, at that time, Zhuowen was only a 9th level formation master. Above the 9th level formation master was the 3rd step of Dao validation. The black gold door in front of him was the highest level of the 3rd step of Dao validation. It was a heaven-level formation. How long had it been? Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign naturally didn't believe that Zhuowen's formation skills had reached the heaven-defying heaven level. In his opinion, Zhuowen's formation skills could reach the 1st step of Dao validation. He was already a genius. Zhuowen stood in front of the black gold door and observed for a while. Then he said indifferently, Brother Myrtle Star Sovereign, I can crack this formation, but it may take a lot of time. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign nodded and said, Brother Zhua, I know that you're very talented in formations, but you've only studied formations for a short time. Although you can't crack the heaven-level formation now, you'll definitely be able to do it in the future. What? Zhuowen, what did you just say? Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign realized something and couldn't help but widen his eyes. He looked at Zhuowen and repeated what he had just said. Zhuowen's gaze was calm as he said, this should be a heaven-connecting gray defensive formation called the Emerald Jade Defense Formation. Although it's a rather high-level formation among heaven-connecting grade formations, and it'll be rather difficult for me to break through it with my current level, I'll still be able to break through it completely. Brother Zhua, you don't have to show off in front of me because of our relationship. After all, this is a heaven-level formation. If you're not a heaven-level formation master, it's basically impossible to crack it. I know your formation skills are very strong, but before Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign could say anything, Zhuowen directly replied, Brother Myrtle Star Sovereign, I'm a heaven-level formation master. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign opened his mouth slightly, not knowing what to say. He just stared blankly at Zhuowen. Brother Zhua, are you serious? Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign's eyes lit up with excitement. I won't joke about this kind of thing, Zhuowen said with a smile. Good. Brother Zhua, if you can crack the formation of this black gold gate, I, Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign, promise you that you can choose whatever you want from the inheritance of the Undying Bird. I only want the inheritance of the Undying Bird, and the rest of the Undying Bird's things can be yours. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign laughed. Zhuowen waved his hand and said, Brother Myrtle Star Sovereign, you're flattering me. If there's something I need in the inheritance of the undying bird, I'll take it. If there's no such thing, I won't touch your inheritance." Crepe Myrtle Star's sovereign grinned and said expectantly, "Brother Joie, you're going to start now." "Let's start now." Juan walked to the black gold gate and sat down cross-legged. With a wave of his sleeve, he summoned beast bone formation discs. Chapter 3279. Possession 3 days later. Juan suddenly opened his eyes, and his eyes flickered with a blazing and excited glow. With a wave of his sleeve, the beast bone formation disc violently slammed into the black gold door like a whirlwind. With a cracking sound, the ripples on the surface of the black gold door collapsed into powder, revealing the original appearance of the black gold door behind the formation. It really broke. Crepe Myrtle Star's eyes narrowed, and his body trembled with excitement. Juan put away the beast bone formation disc, his eyes revealing a trace of understanding. Heaven-piercing formation could be said to be very rare now. Every time Juan deciphered a heaven-piercing formation, he would gain some enlightenment. Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch walked to the black gold door and pressed his right palm against it. A black flame that was so black that it was almost tangible emerged from his palm. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The carving of the undying bird on the black gold door seemed to come alive. It opened its eyes, spread its wings, and flew out of the door. Terrifying black flames burst out of its body, and it burrowed into Crepe Myrtle Star's palm. Creak! The moment the undying bird entered Crepe Myrtle Star's palm, the black gold door slowly opened. A wave of extremely rich heavenly law energy surged over, causing Juan to feel a wave of refreshment and comfort. What rich heaven path energy! Juan's eyes were filled with surprise. The heaven path energy inside the black gold door was so terrifying that he had never seen it before. He knew very well that if he cultivated in this environment, he would be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort. The efficiency would be very high. The two entered the black gold door and found a huge bird's nest burning with black flames in front of them. The appearance of this bird's nest was not much different from an ordinary bird's nest. The only difference was that this bird's nest was much bigger than any building. Moreover, the bird's nest was surrounded by black flames that seemed to never be extinguished. The corpse of the undying bird should be in this bird's nest. Crepe Myrtle Star's eyes were filled with ecstasy. He could not wait to rush towards the bird's nest. As soon as Juan entered the black gold door, he immediately frowned. He felt that something was wrong. Just as he was about to warn Crepe Myrtle Star, the latter had already entered the bird's nest. "Brother Crepe Myrtle Star, wait. There's something strange here," Juan said hurriedly. Unfortunately, as soon as Juan finished speaking, Crepe Myrtle Star had already rushed into the bird's nest. What was strange was that when Crepe Myrtle Star entered, the terrifying black flames outside the bird's nest automatically, with no intention of Crepe Myrtle Star. Juan helplessly, he followed Crepe Myrtle Star and Crepe Myrtle Star star. Winley, star that, Myrtle Star Myrtle Star translation translation stars translation translation star translation star translation Myrtle Star how star Zhang star and star. Juan kicked with his right foot and dodged the Myrtle Star's rain in time. His eyes became cold and deep. He felt more and more strange. The bird's nest seemed to be intelligent. It allowed Crepe Myrtle Star to enter, but stopped him outside. The soul of the undying bird hasn't been completely destroyed by me. It's still alive, so it's controlling its nest? Juan thought of a possibility, and his expression changed greatly. Originally, when he destroyed the soul of the undying bird at the entrance of the inner area, he thought that the soul of the undying bird had completely collapsed. Therefore, there would be no obstacles in entering the land of inheritance. However, he was wrong. The undying bird was really not simple. He had used all his trump cards, but he still could not completely destroy the soul of the undying bird. Oh no, Brother Crepe Myrtle is in danger. Juan thought of something, and his expression changed slightly. He suddenly punched the bird's nest. The power of the Pangu sacred body exploded. A terrifying wind swept out, and space and time exploded. Bang! 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 The black flames on the surface of the bird's nest blasted out like a cannonball and smashed onto Zhuan's fist. The terrifying collision energy was like water ripples, constantly spreading out in all directions. It looked very terrifying. Zhuan did not hesitate to use the profound meaning to open the sky blade, and heaven and earth perished together. The destructive and sharp aura exploded at the same time, and the black flames around the bird's nest were directly annihilated. However, there were too many black flames around the bird's nest. They were mighty like waves, constantly sweeping toward Zhuan as if they were going to drown Zhuan. At this moment, Zhuan used the torch dragon's eye and the fate space-time kill to narrowly avoid the attack of the terrifying black flames. Zhuan did not fight the black flames of the bird's nest head-on. He knew that the black flames were the lifetime energy of the undying bird. If he fought head-on, he would only be at a disadvantage. He planned to use the torch dragon's eye to find the weakness of the bird's nest and directly enter it. The torch dragon's eye was the most powerful magic of the ancestral sorcerer candle dragon. It could see through any flaws and fabrications. The black flames of the undying bird were not inferior to the torch dragon's eye. Suddenly, Zhuan's eyes lit up. Through the torch dragon's eye, he saw several flaws in the bird's nest. He found the most obvious one. After dodging the attack of the black flames, he took a step forward and entered that flaw. The black flames surged up, trying to stop Zhuan from rushing into the bird's nest. Unfortunately, Zhuan did not care. He used his body to resist the black flames and rushed into the bird's nest. The space in the bird's nest was very large. The moment Zhuan entered the bird's nest, he summoned the Thunder Fire Sword, Blood Immortal Sword, and Sacrificial Death Sword. They surrounded him to protect his safety. However, what surprised Zhuan was that the bird's nest did not have any terrifying black flames like the outside world. Instead, the heavenly Tao energy inside was richer. In addition, Zhuan also noticed that there was a giant bird corpse lying in the middle of the bird's nest. The giant bird was covered in black feathers and burning with faint black flames. It was motionless. Zhuan knew that this should be the corpse of the undying bird. At this moment, in front of the undying bird's head, Crepestar's sovereign was slowly approaching. He stretched out his right hand and placed it between the undying bird's eyebrows. Zhuan's eyes narrowed. He took a step forward and immediately approached Crepestar's sovereign and pulled him back. A black energy flickered between the undying bird's eyebrows. This black energy was constantly surging into Crepestar's sovereign's body. Zhuan knew at a glance that this black energy should be the soul of the undying bird. The undying bird was planning to possess Crepestar's sovereign. Zhuan did not hesitate to cut off the connection between the black energy and Crepestar's sovereign. Crepestar's sovereign spat out a mouthful of blood, and a sharp sound came from between the undying bird's eyebrows. The sound was filled with exasperation. "Damn it, you deserve to die." The undying bird's sharp voice rang out. Then, a black energy suddenly swept out from between its eyebrows and disappeared instantly, entering Zhuan's eyebrows. Zhuan's attention was all on Crepestar's sovereign. For a moment, he did not notice that the undying bird's soul had entered between his eyebrows. "No, your goal is to possess me?" Zhuan suddenly realized something. The undying bird's soul possessed him very quickly. He could not believe it. If the undying bird wanted to possess Crepestar's sovereign, it would have succeeded before he entered the bird's nest. However, it did not. Instead, it created the illusion of a slow possession. All of this was to lure Zhuan to the undying bird's corpse. Chapter 3280. Inheritance. The undying bird's divine soul was very powerful. It was like a terrifying black flame, burning Zhuan's divine soul and spreading through his sea of consciousness. Zhuan's face was pale, and his eyes were filled with pain. The undying bird's divine soul was just too powerful. It was like a ball of fire that was scorching hot. If Zhuan's divine soul wasn't so much stronger than an ordinary cultivator's, his divine soul and sea of consciousness would have started to crumble. Hee, kid, your physical body isn't ordinary. Before you die, I'll give you a chance. Tell me the origin of your physical body. Don't try to fool me by telling me that your physical body is the Devourer King's. I can see that your physical body is many times stronger than the Devourer King's. Moreover, its nature is completely different. The undying bird's cold voice resounded in Zhuan's sea of consciousness, shaking Zhuan's mind. Zhuan endured the discomfort in his sea of consciousness and said coldly, "You should have seen the origin of my physical body long ago, right? Do you still need me to tell you?" The undying bird sneered and said, "Of course I do. I'm just guessing. I'm not sure." Hee. Zhuan only sneered and said nothing. "It seems like you're refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Then I don't need to ask you. I'll just take over your body and search your memories before I wipe out your divine soul." The undying bird sneered and didn't say anything else. It continued to wreak havoc in Zhuan's sea of consciousness. Black flames filled Zhuan's sea of consciousness. Terrifying heat surged up, causing Zhuan's eyes to widen. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. But soon, the black flames that covered the entire sea of consciousness were drowned by an even more vast and terrifying energy. Then, the raging black flames were frozen in midair by this vast energy. The undying bird's spirit, which was flying in the sea of consciousness, was also suppressed by this terrifying energy. The undying bird's eyes were filled with fear. It looked left and right, feeling incredulous. With the strength of his divine soul, destroying Zhuan's divine soul was more than enough. But now, in Zhuan's divine soul, there was actually such a terrifying energy that was suppressing its entire body. This made the undying bird feel fear and disbelief. This kind of terrifying energy had already exceeded the scope of what the undying bird could withstand. Then, the undying bird saw a dazzling banner fly out from the depths of Zhuan's sea of consciousness, especially the image of a giant drawn on the surface of the banner. It was so vivid that it seemed to have a spirit of its own. "It's the Panga banner." No, the undying bird could not believe it. It wanted to escape, but the pressure of the Panga banner was too terrifying. It firmly suppressed its divine soul, making it unable to move. In the end, the undying bird could only watch as its divine soul was suppressed by the Panga banner. Under the terrifying energy of the Panga banner, its divine soul slowly dissipated and disappeared. It turned into wisps of divine soul fragments that were absorbed by Zhuan's sea of consciousness. With the nourishment of the undying bird's divine soul, Zhuan's sea of consciousness gradually recovered and became even stronger than before. Zhuan slowly opened his eyes, and a sarcastic smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. In fact, when he knew that the undying bird intended to possess him, Zhuan was not worried at all. This was because in his sea of consciousness, there was such a terrifying thing as the Panga banner. Under this starry sky, there should not be many creatures that could hurt his divine soul, and the undying bird was no exception. Zhuan looked at Crepe Myrtle Star, who was not far away. At this moment, Crepe Myrtle Star's face was pale and in pain. He had not woken up yet. Zhuan pointed his right hand between Crepe Myrtle Star's eyebrows. With the remaining power of the Panga banner, he poured it into Crepe Myrtle Star's sea of consciousness and understood the remaining power of the undying bird's divine soul. Crepe Myrtle Star spat out a mouthful of blood and slowly opened his eyes. There was a look of horror in his eyes. "Brother Zhuo, just now Crepe Myrtle Star's eyes were filled with guilt. When his divine soul was possessed by the undying bird, he knew what was going on. Moreover, he had seen everything that had happened to Zhuan just now. What he did not expect was that half of the undying bird's inheritance he had obtained turned out to be a trap. It was a trick of the undying bird to possess him. He knew very well that if it were not for Zhuan, he would have died here today. Brother Zhuo, Crepe Myrtle, will never forget your life-saving grace. In the future, whatever Brother Zhuo wants me to do, Crepe Myrtle will do. I will not say a word. Crepe Myrtle Star suddenly knelt on one knee on the ground. His eyes were filled with gratitude as he looked at Juon. Juon quickly helped Crepe Myrtle Star up and said, "Brother Crepe Myrtle, you are my friend. How can I, Juon, stand by and do nothing when you are in trouble? There is no need for such formalities. Otherwise, you will not treat me as a friend." Crepe Myrtle Star nodded, stood up, and said, "Brother Joie, I will not say any more words of gratitude. I will always remember your kindness in my heart, and you will always be my friend." At this point, Crepe Myrtle Star looked at the undying bird's corpse not far away and said in a deep voice, "Brother Joie, the undying bird's inheritance should be in its corpse. It was all thanks to you that I was able to subdue the undying bird's divine soul. I will leave half of the undying bird's inheritance to you." Juon shook his head and said, "Brother Crepe Myrtle, you have already obtained half of the undying bird's inheritance. This is your opportunity. I will not take away someone's beloved. Moreover, I have also obtained a very powerful inheritance. The undying bird's inheritance is useless to me." Crepe Myrtle Star hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, "All right." In Crepe Myrtle Star's opinion, even the undying bird's divine soul could not possess Juon. He knew that the inheritance that Juon had obtained must be extremely amazing. However, Crepe Myrtle Star firmly remembered this kindness in his heart. He did not dare to forget it. The two of them walked to the side of the undying bird's corpse. Juon immediately felt that the undying bird's blood essence aura was extremely vigorous. Juon clicked his tongue in wonder. The undying bird was indeed a famous divine beast from ancient times. Its blood essence was still so vigorous after being stored for so long. It was rare to see such a thing. Juon stretched out his right hand and made a cut on the undying bird's wings. Immediately, blood gushed out. Juon began to absorb the energy of the blood essence. He was pleasantly surprised to find that the energy of the blood essence had made his Pangu, sacred body, somewhat stronger. Brother Crepe Myrtle, the other half of the undying bird's inheritance is in its sea of consciousness. You only need to explore its sea of consciousness, and you should be able to obtain the other half of the inheritance. The blood essence of the undying bird is very beneficial to me, so I may need to use its energy to cultivate. As Juon spoke, he did not wait for Crepe Myrtle Star's reaction. He sat cross-legged on the undying bird's corpse and made a large cut on the undying bird's back with his right hand. The gushing blood essence was absorbed by Juon. He began to consolidate and improve his Pangu, sacred body. The undying bird's divine soul had been destroyed by the Panga banner, so there was nothing in the undying bird's sea of consciousness that could threaten Crepe Myrtle Star. Therefore, he was relieved to let Crepe Myrtle Star explore the undying bird's sea of consciousness. The reason why he knew this was that after the undying bird's divine soul was shattered, he had obtained some of the undying bird's memories. Therefore, he knew that the other half of the inheritance was secretly stored in the depths of the undying bird's sea of consciousness. Chapter 3281. Phoenix Master. After obtaining the other half of the inheritance in the undying bird's consciousness, Crepe Myrtle Star sat not far from the undying bird's corpse and began to silently absorb the massive amount of information in the inheritance. Crepe Myrtle Star's eyes were filled with excitement. The inheritance of the undying bird was terrifying. He was confident that after fully accepting the inheritance, his cultivation would be able to break through to the late stage of the sky-reaching master. After all, his current cultivation was already at the peak of the middle stage of the sky-reaching master. The probability of breaking through was very high. Juon was still sitting cross-legged on the undying bird's corpse. Around him, there was a thick blood mist. The blood mist constantly gushed out from the wounds on the undying bird's corpse and was constantly being absorbed by Juon's body. In the process of absorbing the blood essence, Juon's aura also became more and more terrifying. While Juon and Crepe Myrtle Star were cultivating The atmosphere of the Phoenix people outside the Undying Bird's purgatory seemed to be much gloomier. At this moment, most of the Phoenix people came out of seclusion and gathered in the huge square around the Undying Bird's purgatory. Phone bumming, the two guardians of Xuanhua, and the seven fire deities stood in front of the Phoenix people. The atmosphere in the square was very solemn, but all the people standing in the square were ecstatic. Even Phone bumming, Xianhua, and the others, who were standing at the front, had looks of excitement and anticipation in their eyes. Whoosh! Suddenly, a stream of light appeared in the distant sky. The stream of light was getting closer and closer, and in an instant, it was close. Only then did the people realize that the stream of light was actually a huge and magnificent flying divine artifact. The flying divine artifact looked like a phoenix spreading its wings and flying in the sky. Its entire body was wrapped in powerful and blazing flames. At the head of the flying divine artifact, a purple-robed man stood as straight as a spear. His hands were behind his back, and he had a vast aura of disdain for the world. The moment the Phoenix people in the square saw the purple-robed man, their eyes were filled with fanaticism, and they all knelt on the ground. Phone bumming, the two guardians of Xuanhua, and the seven fire deities, the higher-ups of the Phoenix people, knelt on one knee and said respectfully, "Welcome back, Phoenix Master." The purple-clothed man leaped out and slowly landed in front of Phone bumming and the others. With a wave of his sleeve, he put away the flying divine artifact that was suspended in mid-air. The purple-clothed man was the current lord of the Phoenix. His name was Phone Lilaw. Back then, she was a famous, terrifying genius in the ancient desolate heaven domain. This was especially true for Phone Lilaw, who had a high-grade bloodline of the Phoenix people. Her bloodline far surpassed that of ordinary Phoenix people. Of course, Phone Lilaw's bloodline was still inferior to Mu Chenchue's 99 Phoenix body. After all, the 99 Phoenix body surpassed the bloodline of any Phoenix people. It was a true top-quality bloodline. Phone Lilaw frowned slightly as she glanced at Phone bumming and said, "Your body has collapsed before? This body of yours is something you refined on the spot, right? That's why you can't recover your cultivation at all. Even if you do recover in the future, it will have a huge impact on your future cultivation path. Is this also Zhuowen's doing?" Phone bumming lowered his head and said shamefully, "Phoenix Master, bumming is useless. I can't believe that Zhuowen put me in such a difficult situation. Please punish me, Phoenix Master." Phone Law waved her hand and said, "After all, the Phoenix people are one of the top 10 clans of the ancient desolate heaven domain. Although I've been in the heaven-accessing secret land all year round, my clan's power is here. Not many alien clans in the ancient desolate heaven domain dare to provoke the Phoenix people. Today, this Zhuowen dared to provoke the Phoenix people. Today, I will kill him in my clan." All right, when you sent me the message, you said that Zhuowen was from the Devouring Clan. So, have you sent your troops to wipe out the Devouring Clan tribe? Speaking of this, Feng Lilaw clasped her hands behind her back, her face calm. A while ago, we sent 10,000 elite troops to the Devouring Clan tribe. I think they've almost reached the Devouring Clan tribe and destroyed it. Feng Bumming's eyes sparkled with a gleam of satisfaction. Well done. Since they dared to offend the Phoenix people, not only will they have to pay the price, but their entire clan will be exterminated. This is a benchmark for those who dare to offend our clan. Whoever dares to provoke the Phoenix people must be prepared to be exterminated, said Feng Lilua calmly. However, at this moment, Feng Bumming's communication Jade token rang. Feng Bumming carefully looked at Feng Lilua. Seeing her nod to let him check the message, he took out the communication Jade token. However, after checking the message, Feng Bumming's face darkened. What's the message? Feng Lilua couldn't help but ask as she could see Feng Bumming's grimace. Feng Bumming's eyes sparkled as he hurried to say, Phoenix Master, the message from the front line says that the 10,000 elite troops we sent failed to attack the Devouring Clan tribe. Moreover, most of the elite troops of the Phoenix people were killed. Almost all of them were annihilated. From a message, I heard that the Devouring Clan tribe has a powerful heaven-crossing, slaughtering formation. 10,000 elite troops aren't a match for this heaven-crossing, slaughtering formation. Feng Luo knitted her brows, her face displeased. Feng Bumming crouched on the ground and hurried to beg for forgiveness. Phoenix Master, it's my fault. Bumming will take responsibility for it. This time, I'll send another batch of elite troops to destroy the entire Devouring Clan tribe. Feng Lilua shook her head. No need. I'm afraid that the heaven-crossing slaughtering formation of the Devouring Clan was set up by Zhuowen. We don't need to send more people there. This Zhuowen is a talent. He's a heaven-crossing formation master. It's a pity to kill such a talent. It's better to let him and the entire Devouring Clan respect us as our masters. They will be our slaves forever. Although Feng Luo wasn't happy with Zhuowen's behavior, after knowing that Zhuowen was a heaven-crossing formation master, she didn't want to kill him. Instead, she wanted to use Zhuowen. After all, there weren't many heaven-crossing formation masters in the entire ancient desolate heavenly realm. They were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. In her eyes, if she killed Zhuowen, it would be a pity. It would be best if she could be used by the Phoenix people. Phoenix Master is wise. Feng Bumming's eyes twinkled. Although he wanted to kill Zhuowen directly, since the Phoenix Master had spoken, he didn't dare to talk nonsense. Buming, you mentioned in the message that Zhuowen had set up 3 complementary Heaven Ascension Great Formations outside the Undying Bird Purgatory. Is this true? Although Feng Luo was asking, his gaze had already passed the crowd and landed on the Undying Bird Purgatory behind the crowd. With her eyesight, she could see the ripples of the formation on the surface of the Phoenix Purgatory. Moreover, the ripples were extremely powerful. It wasn't something that could be created by an ordinary formation. Feng Bumming didn't dare to be negligent. He led the 2 guardians and the 7 fire gods to the Phoenix Purgatory. The members of the Phoenix clan in the square also opened up a path for him, their eyes filled with reverence. Arriving in front of the Phoenix Purgatory, Feng Luo extended her right hand and pressed on the surface of the Phoenix Purgatory. Instantly, the dense formation ripples spread out, hindering her right hand from moving forward. Feng Luo snorted coldly. A terrifying purple flame gushed out of her right palm and hit the formation ripples. Chapter 3282. Monster Territory Bang. The stalemate between Feng Luo and the formation did not last long before it exploded with a loud boom. Terrifying ripples spread out, and many of the Phoenix clansmen in the plaza involuntarily groaned and retreated. Feng Luo took a few steps back, her clothes fluttering in the wind. It's really 3 Heaven Passage Great Formations. These 3 great formations are interconnected and complement each other. Their power is terrifying. It's not something an ordinary Heaven Passage master can break. Speaking of this, Feng Lilua's eyes were filled with excitement. She said, Zhuowen's level is very high. He's even higher than an ordinary Heaven Passage Divine Array Master. We must use him. Otherwise, we can only kill him. He Xian said in a low voice. Phoenix Master, these 3 great formations are impregnable. Shuehua and I tried to break them together, but we failed. We were even injured by the backlash. Phoenix Master, do you have the confidence to break these 3 great formations? Feng Lilua's eyes were filled with pride. She said, I can break these 3 great formations by force, but the price I have to pay is too high. It's not worth it. We only need to wait for Zhuowen to leave the Undying Bird Purgatory. At that time, he will break these 3 great formations. Feng Bumming, Xianhua, and the others were enlightened. Feng Lilua was right. Why do they have to break the great formations? Wasn't it the same if they waited for Zhuowen to come out? Phoenix Master is brilliant. Feng Bumming, Xianhua, and the others were impressed. All right, Phoenix Master, what should we do with the Devouring Clan? Feng Bumming cupped his hands and asked, Don't worry about the Devouring Clan. I'm interested in Zhuowen. There's no need to make enemies with him now. If we can use him, there's no need to deal with the Devouring Clan. If we can't use him, It won't be too late to deal with him. Feng Liluo said indifferently. Although Feng Bumming was unwilling, he did not dare to disobey Feng Liluo's order. Next, Feng Bumming, Xuanhua, and the others began to disperse the many Phoenix people in the square, leaving only a small number of elites to guard outside the Phoenix Purgatory and observe the movements of the Phoenix Purgatory at any time. After doing these, Zhuowen said to the Profound Fire Two Protectors, the mission of monitoring the undying bird purgatory will be handed over to you two. Thank you for your kindness, Phoenix Master. We will do our best. The two guardians of Xuanhua were overwhelmed by the favor. Feng Liluo nodded. Then, she looked at Feng Bumming, who was a little uneasy, and said indifferently, Bumming, when you advanced to the early stage of Master Tongtian, I was very gratified. But now, you've disappointed me. Feng Bumming's body trembled as he knelt on the ground, not daring to speak. Get up. The Sorcerer's Song gathering is about to begin. You're the most important person to the Phoenix people, but you ended up like this. Feng Luo snorted coldly and said, with your current state, not to mention getting a spot, it will be difficult for you to even make it through the first round. Feng Bumming was still kneeling on the ground, not saying a word. However, his body was trembling much more obviously. Feng Liluo looked at the trembling Feng Bumming and sighed softly. Get up. Before the Sorcerer's Song gathering begins, I'll refine your physical body. You can stay by my side during this time. Feng Bumming quickly kowtowed and said excitedly, Thank you for your forgiveness, Phoenix Master. This time, you must get a spot in the Sorcerer's Song gathering. Otherwise, I won't let you go. Feng Liluo said indifferently. Feng Bumming's heart trembled as he quickly agreed. With Phoenix Master's help, Bumming should be able to climb back to the peak. The two guardians of Xuanhua looked at Feng Liluo and Feng Bumming, who were leaving, and nodded secretly. Just as Zhuowen was cultivating in the undying bird purgatory outside the primitive heavenly realm, the former 8 heavenly realms, the current demon realm, welcomed 3 uninvited guests. These 3 uninvited guests happened to be the Grand Elder of the Phoenix people, the 3rd Elder of the clan, and Mu Chinxue, who looked a little dazed. At this moment, the 3 of them had just arrived at the border of the demon realm and met an extremely powerful demon clan member. This demon clan member was wearing a thick golden armor. His skin was golden yellow, and there were streaks of hideous blood marks on his cheeks. This demon clan member stopped the Grand Elder and the other 2. His gaze was calm, as if he had been waiting for the 3 of them. Are you the Grand Elder of the Phoenix people, Muyu? The golden-armored man cupped his hands at Grand Elder Muyu and asked the obvious. Muyu did not dare to be negligent. She cupped her hands and said, I'm Muyu of the Phoenix people. May I know your name, fellow cultivator? I'm Yao Xian, one of the 99 demon shamans under the demon Saint Dongwang Tai. The golden-armored man smiled faintly. Muyu's gaze turned serious when she heard that. She had some understanding of the origin of the 99 demon shamans. She knew that the 99 demon shamans were actually the 99 great shaman corpses that were trapped in the 9-story demon tower. However, they were refined into demon shamans by the Dongwang Tai supreme means. They were completely under his command. Moreover, the weakest of the 99 demon shamans was at the early stage of the Master of Heaven. They were a very terrifying force that guarded the Dongwang Tai. In fact, when she met Yao Xian, Muyu realized that Yao Xian's strength was definitely not weaker than hers. Instead, he gave her a very dangerous feeling. She knew that Yao Xian was at least at the middle stage of the Master of Heaven. Muyu has long heard of your great name. This time, we're here to visit the demon saint. I believe the demon saint already knows about our origins, right? Muyu said. Yao Xian nodded and said, the demon saint has already instructed me to do this. You're here to investigate the location of the heavenly armor planet, right? The location of the heavenly armor planet is not within the demon realm. It's in the extraterritorial starry sky outside the demon realm. But we also only know the approximate location. As for the exact location, we're not clear. As he said, Yao Xian took out a jade slip and handed it to Muyu, saying, "What's recorded here is the approximate location. You can go and look according to the instructions." Muyu received the jade slip and cupped her fists at Yao Xian. After expressing her gratitude, she took out a jade bottle and said, "In accordance with the demon saint's request, I brought this drop of phoenix blood." Yao Xian received the jade bottle, his gaze clearly revealing a look of excitement. After checking that there were no errors, Yao Xian cupped his fists and said, "Thank you for your hard work, Grand Elder." Yao Xian will take my leave first. I still have to report to the demon saint. Finished talking, Yao Xian left very straightforwardly. Muyu did not urge him to stay either. Instead, after checking the jade slip, she chose a direction and sped off. Before she came to the demon realm, she had already investigated Mu Qinshue's origins clearly long ago. This woman was a native of the only life planet in the extraterritorial starry sky, the Heavenly Armor Planet. It was just that the Heavenly Armor Planet was said to have been refined by that Zhuan later. It should not be in the extraterritorial starry sky now. But what Muyu was searching for was not the Heavenly Armor Planet, but the part of the starry sky that gave birth to the Heavenly Armor Planet. She was very clear that the place that could give birth to the 99 Phoenix physique bloodline definitely contained a secret. Chapter 3283. Eastern Emperor Tai, Grand Elder, this is really strange. We suddenly came to the demon realm, but Eastern Emperor Tai didn't ask us anything. He just sent a demon shaman to get the phoenix blood. On the way to the extraterritorial starry sky, the third elder, in Yin, looked puzzled and asked the Grand Elder beside him. "Grand Elder Mu, you had been frowning." Now that third elder in Yin asked. She was silent for a while and said, "I've never met Eastern Emperor Tai, but I heard from the Phoenix Master that Eastern Emperor Tai is an expert from the ancient times. He's an expert from the same era as our ancestor, the Phoenix. He's a supreme expert who has experienced countless disasters. He's definitely not someone to be trifled with. His actions this time are really unexpected. I thought he would invite us to the demon realm, but he didn't. He just sent a demon shaman. He didn't even say a word of invitation." Speaking of this, Muyu's frown deepened. "Grand Elder, isn't this better? If we enter the demon realm, we'll be entering the demon race's hinterland. If the demon race has evil intentions towards us, then we'll be in trouble. This situation is just right for us." Third Elder didn't understand Grand Elder's worries. Muyu shook her head and said, "I hope so. It should be this part of the starry sky." Suddenly, Muyu stopped at a part of the starry sky. This part of the starry sky was filled with densely packed rubble of different sizes. Other than that, there were many dim planets in the distance. These planets were called dead planets by the cultivators of the eight heavens. Dead planets were the opposite of life planets. There were no living creatures or plants on dead planets. The entire surface of the planet was filled with desolation. "There's nothing in this part of the starry sky. Grand Elder, are you sure it's here?" Third Elder asked with a frown. "I've checked Mu Qinshue's memories. Back then, Heavenly Armor Star was here. However, Heavenly Armor Star was taken away by Zhuo, so now there are only countless rocks here," Great Clan Elder said with certainty. "Next, let's check if there's any aura related to the Phoenix in this part of the starry sky." As the Great Elder spoke, he took out a fiery red mirror from his spirit ring. The fiery red mirror looked like a ball of raging flames, and the surface of the mirror was blood red like fresh blood, adding a strange aura to it. The Grand Elder formed a seal with both hands, and the surface of the mirror began to burn with flames. The flames burned more and more vigorously. In an instant, the flames turned into a sea of fire that spread out in all directions, instantly enveloping the entire starry sky. The sea of fire lasted for about 10 breaths of time before it swiftly shrank. Great Clan Elder Muyu was overjoyed when he saw the sea of fire shrink. This mirror was refined from the blood essence of the Phoenix, so it was very sensitive to the aura of the Phoenix. Once the aura of the Phoenix was present, the sea of fire gushing out of the mirror would quickly shrink to the source of the aura of the phoenix. But now, only 10 breaths of time had passed, and the sea of fire had shrunk. This proved that there was indeed the aura of a phoenix in this place. When the sea of fire finally condensed into a thumb-sized fire spot, this fire spot suddenly expanded and finally formed a fire vortex that was as tall as a person. There really is another world under this starry sky. The Grand Elder and the Third Elder were overjoyed. They didn't travel thousands of miles to the demon realm in vain. Just as the Grand Elder and the Third Elder were about to step into the fire vortex and enter the other world inside the vortex, suddenly, 2 terrifying fire pillars shot out from the fire vortex. These 2 fire pillars condensed a terrifying fire energy, and they respectively blasted towards the Grand Elder and the Third Elder. The Grand Elder and the Third Elder's faces changed greatly, and they both used their natal divine artifacts to attack the 2 fire pillars. Bang! Bang! The power of these 2 fire pillars was too terrifying. The Grand Elder and the Third Elder both groaned at the same time, and they couldn't help but retreat. The moment the 2 of them retreated, the fire vortex actually moved quickly, brushing past the Grand Elder and the Third Elder, and landed on Mu Chinxue, who was behind them. At this moment, Mu Chinxue's eyes were still lifeless, and she was frozen in place, not knowing how to dodge. After the fire vortex swallowed Mu Chinxue, it quickly dissipated. Damn it! The Grand Elder and the Third Elder's faces changed greatly. The moment the fire vortex dissipated, they ignored the injuries they suffered and rushed towards the fire vortex. Unfortunately, when the 2 of them rushed in front of the fire vortex had already completely dissipated, and it disappeared. The Grand Elder was flustered and exasperated, and he quickly used the mirror in his hand to summon the sea of fire again. The sea of fire spread in all directions, and it quickly spread to the limit. But this time, the sea of fire didn't shrink after dozens of breaths. The Grand Elder didn't believe it, and he continued to maintain the sea of fire. After several minutes, the sea of fire still didn't shrink. Grand Elder, I'm afraid that the Phoenix's aura has already disappeared from this starry sky. This is really inconceivable. That must be a mysterious world, and there's even a spirituality that escaped. The Third Elder felt that it was inconceivable. The Grand Elder Mu Yu was a little dejected. She didn't expect that such an unforeseen event would happen, and it really caught her off guard. Now, the entrance to the mysterious world had already escaped, and Mu Chinxue was also pulled into the mysterious world, and all of a sudden, all of the clues were lost. I don't believe that the mysterious world will really escape just because of this. Mu Yu was very unwilling. She gritted her teeth and rushed to another place, summoning the sea of fire again to search for the Phoenix's aura that had just appeared. She changed her position again and again, but unfortunately, all she got in return was failure. At the same time, in the darkness of the starry sky, 2 figures passed through the layers of void and landed in the starry sky, where Mu Yu and the others were. If one looked closer, one could see that one of the 2 figures was a burly man in golden armor. It was Yao Xian, who had met with the Grand Elder Mu Yu and the others previously. The figure standing beside Yao Xian was a man with a slender figure. He wore a long black robe, and there were golden lines at every corner of the long robe. However, this man wore a large hoodie on his head, and it covered his entire face, so it was impossible to see his face clearly. This man wearing a black robe with golden edges was the master of the entire devil realm, Dongwang Tai Yi. Yao Xian stood beside Dongwang Tai Yi, and he didn't dare to say anything. His eyes were filled with reverence. Sir, it seems that there should be something related to the ancient divine beast, the phoenix in this starry sky. As expected, these 2 phoenix people didn't come here with good intentions. Should we take them down? Yao Xian asked. There's no need. After all, I took their phoenix blood. Just treat it as compensation for their impudence in my territory. As long as it's not too much, there's no need to pursue it. However, I'm very curious about the human that the Phoenix people brought here by Mu Yu. He was actually chosen by the Phoenix. This is a little beyond my expectations. Dong Wang Tai, he said calmly. Yao Xian's eyes flickered, and he said hesitantly, Sir, do you mean that the divine beast, the Phoenix, really exists in this starry sky? As far as I know, the Phoenix should have already fallen. It's impossible for it to come back to life. Yes, the Phoenix has indeed fallen, but its inheritance has been passed down, and that human is the one chosen by the Phoenix. No wonder that human has the 99 Phoenix body. Yao Xian, we don't have to care about this anymore. Let's go back. Chapter 3284. Taishian Spiritual Elixir of Creation in the Depths of the Phoenix's Purgatory. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes in the nest that was burning with black flames. In the depths of his eyes, there was intense excitement. A vast and terrifying aura surged out from his body. It was extremely violent and powerful. Zhuowen's aura rose steadily. The aura was so terrifying that it seemed to be real. It gathered into an extremely terrifying storm. The storm became more and more terrifying and suddenly soared into the sky. Bang! 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 The huge bird's nest was torn into countless pieces by this terrifying storm. As for the black flames that lingered around the nest, they were constantly being suppressed and weakened by the terrifying storm. In the end, the black flames were completely annihilated by the terrifying aura storm. Crepe Star, who was sitting cross-legged in the nest, was also awakened by the terrifying aura. When he saw the nest that had been turned into ruins, he could not help but open his mouth in surprise. He was well aware of how terrifying the undying bird's nest was and how endless the black flames outside were. But now, it was annihilated. It was too terrifying. Crepe Star stood up and looked at the figure standing on the Phoenix's corpse in awe. He also noticed that the corpse of the undying bird had completely shriveled up. He knew that the Phoenix's blood essence energy had been completely absorbed by Zhuowen. It's worthy of being an ancient divine beast. The blood essence energy contained in its body is so vast and powerful. Zhuowen was so happy that he had an impulse to roar. After absorbing the Phoenix's blood essence energy, the level of his Panga's sacred body did continue to increase. It broke through from the peak of the early stage of 7 stars to the middle stage, then the late stage, and finally the peak. This made Zhuowen very surprised. Originally, he was already very happy that the undying bird's blood essence energy could raise him to the late stage of 7 star, but he did not expect that it would directly raise him to the peak of 7 star. The Panga's sacred body had reached the peak of the 7 stars. Zhuowen's qualities had been improved in all aspects. Even his magic skills had been greatly improved. Zhuowen was now confident that he could fight against the sky-reaching master at the middle stage without relying on any trump cards. He even had a great chance of defeating him. Of course, if he used all kinds of trump cards, Zhuowen was confident that he could fight against a sky-reaching master at the late stage. Brother Zhuo, congratulations on your breakthrough. Purple Star Sovereign hurriedly walked over to congratulate Zhuowen. Zhuowen waved his hand and said with a smile, It's all thanks to the Phoenix's blood essence. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to advance so quickly. Then, Zhuowen looked Star and said, Brother Crepe Star, brother, you should have received the Phoenix's inheritance. You are you? Crepe Star smiled bitterly and said, I should be half a step into the sky-reaching master at the late stage, but I'm still a little short. I can't completely break through the shackles. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded and said, Brother Crepe Star, you should only need a little bit of opportunity to smoothly advance. Now, I'll give you that opportunity. Crepe Star was stunned. He did not understand what Zhuowen meant. Opportunities to break through were hard to come by. Zhuowen said that he would give him an opportunity. Was this a joke? Brother Crepe Star, have you heard of the Taishian Spirit Creation Elixir? Zhuowen asked with a smile. Of course. The Taishian Spirit Creation Elixir should be a sky-reaching master at the late stage. It's very precious. And it's said that after swallowing the Taishian spirit creation elixir, a trace of creation power will be born in the body. This creation power can give the person who consumes the elixir the opportunity to extend his comprehension and break through the realm in a short time. It's said that it's suitable for cultivators at the late stage of the sky-reaching master and below. Crepestar seemed to have thought of something. He looked at Zhuowen in disbelief and said, "Brother Zhuo, do you have this kind of elixir?" Zhuowen shook his head. Crepestar immediately looked disappointed. "Although I don't, I have the herbs to refine the Taishian spirit creation elixir," Zhuowen said. Crepestar was a little depressed and said, "What's the use of having the herbs? The Taishian spirit creation elixir is a sky-reaching master at the late stage. It's very difficult for an ordinary sky-reaching alchemist to refine it. Sigh, if only there was a sky-reaching alchemist now." Zhuowen shrugged and took out the Emperor elixir furnace and the herbs for the Taishian spirit creation elixir. "Brother Zhuo, what are you doing?" Crepestar noticed that something was wrong and hurriedly asked. "Of course it's alchemy. The opportunity I'm talking about is the Taishian spirit creation elixir. I plan to refine this elixir for you," Zhuowen said. The Taishian spirit creation elixir is a sky-reaching master. "Brother Zhuo, are you also a sky-reaching alchemist?" Crepestar asked suspiciously. "Yes. Is there a problem?" Zhuowen said. Crepestar was speechless, but he was shocked in his heart. He had been with Zhuowen for a period of time and knew Zhuowen's character very well. He knew that Zhuowen was definitely not the kind of person who would boast. In other words, what Zhuowen said about him being a sky-reaching alchemist was true. Thinking of this, Crepestar's heart was very complicated. It was more disbelief. He already knew that Zhuowen was a sky-reaching formation Tao divine master. This was already heaven-defying enough. But now, Zhuowen, this guy, was actually also a sky-reaching alchemist. My God, both Formation Tao and Alchemy Tao reached sky-reaching Alchemy Tao. In the countless years of evolution of this starry sky, it was very rare for such a freak to appear. Furthermore, Crepestar also knew that several hundred years ago, when Zhuowen was still in the eight heavens, this guy's Formation Tao and Alchemy Tao had not corroborated Tao. In other words, this guy only used several hundred years to reach sky-reaching Alchemy Tao, Formation Tao, and cultivation. This could no longer be described as freakish. It was freakish. Thinking of this, Crepestar's gaze when looking at Zhuowen was filled with awe. He originally thought that relying on the undying bird's inheritance, his cultivation speed was already terrifying enough. But this guy in front of him was clearly God knows how many times more impressive than him. Speaking of which, Crepestar also felt somewhat frustrated in his heart. Back when he was in the eight heavens, he was already inferior to Zhuowen. Now that they met again, he was still inferior to Zhuowen, and the gap between them was getting bigger and bigger. This was really annoying. "Boy, you finally opened the furnace to refine elixirs again. I'm so hungry and thirsty." The elixir emperor Turtle quickly rushed out of the elixir furnace and looked at Zhuowen hungrily. Zhuowen was speechless. He asked the elixir emperor Turtle to prepare quickly, while he ignited the divine fire and began to calm down. He took out the true elixir array record, intending to use the power of the record to refine this divine elixir. This was the first time he had refined a sky-reaching late-stage divine elixir. In fact, his current level was not enough. He had to use the true elixir array record to refine it by force. Before leaving the Phoenix Purgatory, Zhuowen had to raise the cultivation of Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign. He heard from Crepestar that the Phoenix Master of the Phoenix people had returned to the primitive heavenly realm from the sky-reaching secret land. As the supreme expert of the Phoenix people, the Phoenix Master must be at the late stage of sky-reaching master. If such an expert cooperated with the experts of the Phoenix people to besiege him, he would definitely be defeated. The only chance was for Crepestar to also reach the late stage of sky-reaching master and help him restrain the Phoenix Master. The Phoenix people dared to torture Mu Qinxue in the Phoenix Purgatory. Zhuowen would not let go of this debt. He would turn the Phoenix people upside down. Chapter 3285. Undead which fire Jua when ignited his divine flame and opened the cauldron. The true alchemy array record also floated above his head. Streaks of information turned into golden characters that entered the space between his eyebrows. Zhuan comprehended the true alchemy array record while skillfully placing the herbs he had prepared into the cauldron in an orderly manner. When all the herbs were placed into the cauldron, Zhuan formed a seal with both hands and used the alchemy art. Time gradually passed, and soon, several days had passed. The lid of the imperial alchemy cauldron began to emit a mist. The mist was filled with dense, medicinal energy. Smelling the medicinal energy, Crepe Myrtle's star felt refreshed. Crepe Myrtle's star was excited. He knew that Zhuan was likely to succeed this time. Bang! Suddenly, the mist emitted from the cauldron lid turned pitch black. Zhuan's expression changed slightly. He lifted the lid of the cauldron and terrifying black smoke poured out. It looked like a huge black pillar. F***CK. I say, Zhuan, why didn't you show any signs of failure? I'm choking to death. Beside the Imperial Alchemy cauldron, the Imperial Alchemy turtle was caught off guard. It was enveloped by the thick black smoke and coughed repeatedly. Tears streamed down its face as it hurriedly escaped. Crepe Myrtle Star sighed. Although he didn't know alchemy, he knew that Zhuan had failed. He wanted to comfort Zhuan, but he soon saw that Zhuan was standing there with his eyes narrowed, as if he was thinking about something. He didn't disturb him. He knew that Zhuan was thinking about the reason for his failure. Zhuan stood in place for a full 7 days and 7 nights. Finally, he moved. Zhuan walked to the side of the Imperial Alchemy cauldron. With a wave of his sleeve, he took out another set of herbs for the profound creation spirit pill. Imperial Alchemy turtle, help me control the fire. Zhuan instructed the Imperial Alchemy turtle beside him. Then, he ignited the divine fire under the Imperial Alchemy cauldron. The Imperial Alchemy turtle's black eyes were filled with fear. It asked cautiously, "Kid, you won't blow up the cauldron again, will you? If you don't have the confidence, don't refine it first. Let's talk about it later. Cut the crap. Control the fire. Otherwise, you won't be able to refine pills in the future," Zhuan said. When the Imperial Alchemy turtle heard this, it helped Zhuan to control the fire. The Imperial Alchemy cauldron. Alchemy cauldron. Didn't have the alchemy cauldrons. Alchemy Studio cauldron time. Time instead time star. Started book studio instead. Art studio. Studio Lu Studio Lu Studio. Time. Liu Art. Studio. Art He Su which he, a Chi Dan was. You which sect, Heart and Liu Pill is was. After a while, his hands moved very quickly as he placed the medicinal herbs around him into the Emperor Pill furnace in an orderly manner. The speed at which he threw the herbs was very fast. In less than 5 breaths of time, all the herbs were thrown into the pill furnace. Zhuan, on the other hand, was constantly forming the alchemy hand seal. His divine sense was also probing into the alchemy cauldron to observe the minute changes within. For the second time, Zhuan spent 5 days before the pill furnace once again emitted a medicinal fragrance. The pill emperor furnace was very cautious. After smelling the medicinal fragrance, it began to quietly retreat. It was afraid that if the refinement failed again, it would suffer a calamity. However, Zhuan wouldn't let this guy ruin his pill refinement, so he pulled it back and secretly warned it before continuing to form pill seals. The medicinal fragrance grew stronger and stronger, filling the entire underground space. The instant the medicinal fragrance reached its peak, Zhuan's eyes burst forth with a bright light. His right hand suddenly slapped the lid of the furnace. With a bang, the lid of the cauldron was blown away. 12 divine pills shot out from the inside of the cauldron. Zhuan took out a jade bottle and stored these 12 divine pills inside without any trace of politeness. Zhuan took out a divine pill and threw it to the delighted pill emperor turtle. Then, he took out 5 more and threw them to Crepe Star Sovereign. Crepestar's sovereign took the divine pills in a daze. When he confirmed that the divine pills in his hand were indeed Taishian spiritual creation pills, he was truly shocked. It's actually a special grade Taishian spiritual creation pill. Crepestar's sovereign was stunned. He hurriedly returned 4 of the Taishian spiritual creation pills to Zhuowen. Brother Crepestar, you have obtained the inheritance of the undying bird. Its bloodline is extraordinary. The difficulty of advancing will definitely be much higher than that of ordinary cultivators. These divine pills are mainly given to you to ensure that nothing goes wrong, Zhuowen said. Crepestar's sovereign gratefully accepted the 5 Taishian spiritual creation pills. Brother Zhuo, I won't say any words of gratitude. After I successfully advance, I will definitely repay Brother Zhuo's kindness. After saying that, Crepestar's sovereign went straight to a nearby cave. After casually setting up a defensive restriction, he went into seclusion to cultivate. Zhuowen did not intend to disturb Crepestar's sovereign. He also found a cave. After throwing out a large pile of Heavenly Path origin crystals, he began to absorb the energy, intending to consolidate the realm of the newly advanced Pangu sacred body. Zhuowen spent 3 days to consolidate the realm of the Pangu sacred body, which was at the peak of the 7 stars realm. He saw that Crepestar's sovereign was still in seclusion, beginning to comprehend the 5 great mysteries that he had comprehended from the Pangu banner. The 5 great mysteries were the sky opening blade, the infinite primordial chaos, the mysterious light of creation, the death of heaven and earth, and the Pangu, sacred might. Zhuowen had already learned the first 4 great mysteries and could use them flexibly. After the advancement of the Pangu sacred body, the power of the mysteries had naturally increased a lot. What he was most interested in was the 5th great mystery, the Pangu sacred might. According to the introduction of the mysteries, when he used the Pangu sacred might, he could summon the shadow of Pangu, erupt with supreme power, and crush everything. However, the conditions to use the mysteries were too harsh. At the very least, he had to have a 7 stars Pangu sacred body, and he could only barely withstand the Pangu sacred might. If he used it for too long, his Pangu sacred body would collapse. This showed how terrifying the mysteries were. This time, Zhuowen was mainly comprehending the Pangu sacred might. The more he comprehended, the more he felt the terror of the Pangu sacred might. However, he was also afraid of the side effects of the Pangu sacred might. Such a terrifying mysteries could not be used easily unless it was a real life and death situation. It did not take Zhuowen long to comprehend the Pangu sacred might. After all, the 5 great mysteries were originally engraved in his mind by the Pangu banner. He could use them at any time if he wanted to. It was just that he could use the 5 great mysteries more accurately if he comprehended them. After absorbing the blood essence of the undying bird, the energy of the Zhurong poisonous insect in my body has mutated. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. He opened his right palm, and a deep black flame emerged in his palm. The aura of the black flame was very similar to the flame of the undying bird, but it was more terrifying. This was because the flame had mutated from the flame energy of both the undying bird and the Zhurong poisonous insect. It was extremely powerful, much more powerful than Zhuowen's own divine fire. Both the undying bird and the Zhurong poisonous insect were proficient in fire energy. The fusion of the two was tantamount to a combination of 2 powerful forces. The mutated flame naturally would not be weak. This flame will be called the Undying Wizard Flame from now on. Zhuowen named the flame with a smile. Suddenly, he stopped smiling and took out a Ho-E-Divine arrow from the macro world. Chapter 3286. Outer Layer Zhuowen had a total of 4 Ho-E-Divine arrows. However, there was only 1 Ho-E-Divine arrow in its perfect state. It was the one that the Black King had helped him remove the Golden Crow's blood from its surface. As for the other 3 Ho-E-Divine arrows, he had obtained them after entering the eldritch heavenly realm. The surface of the arrows was more or less stained with the golden crow's blood, which hindered the power of the divine arrows. He had thought of using the divine fire to remove the golden crow's blood. However, the effect was minimal. Although his divine fire could refine the blood, the speed was too slow. It could even be said to be extremely slow. Now, the immortal sorcerer fire was much more powerful than his own divine fire. He felt that the immortal sorcerer fire would be much better at removing the golden crow's blood. Thinking of this, Zhuowen took out the divine arrow and placed it in his palm. A ball of pitch-black flame gushed out of his palm and instantly enveloped the divine arrow. Zhuowen was pleasantly surprised to find that the golden crow's blood on the surface of the divine arrow was gradually dissipating under the black flame. It is indeed effective. Zhuowen was pleasantly surprised. The immortal sorcerer fire could really remove the golden crow's blood, and the effect was so obvious. At the current speed, the immortal sorcerer fire should be able to remove all the golden crow's blood from the surface of the divine arrow in a few hours. After a few hours, the golden crow's blood on the surface of the divine arrow in Zhuowen's hand gradually disappeared, revealing the original appearance of the divine arrow. Zhuowen forcibly suppressed the surging aura of the divine arrow. After putting away the divine arrow, he took out the second one and continued to use the immortal sorcerer fire to remove the golden crow's blood. In this way, Zhuowen spent most of the day removing all the golden crow's blood from the surface of the three divine arrows. After doing this, Zhuowen let out a sigh of relief. His eyes were filled with excitement. Furthermore, he wanted to see if he could draw the bow to the end after his Panga sacred body had reached the peak of the Seven Stars realm. Zhuowen put away the divine arrow and took out the divine bow. Holding the bow in his left hand and the bowstring in his right hand, he pulled it back. A terrifying killing intent gushed out, forming gusts of astral winds that swept over. Zhuowen's hair fluttered in the wind. In one breath, Zhuowen had reached half the distance. He felt a strong resistance. He didn't care about that. With a sudden tug, he pulled the bowstring to 2/3 of its length. At this moment, the resistance had already reached a terrifying level. The killing intent that erupted from the divine bow had also reached an extremely shocking level. Zhuowen's right hand began to tremble. He continued to pull the bowstring, but the angle was very slow. When Zhuowen pulled the bowstring to 3/4 of its length, the corner of his eyes twitched. A strong pressure accompanied by killing intent pressed down on him from all directions, causing him to involuntarily spit out a mouthful of blood. Zhuowen hurriedly released the bowstring, only to hear a thunderous sound explode in the air. Moreover, the sound of thunder became denser and louder. In midair, there was a continuous roar of thunder. The cave that Zhuowen was in shook violently. Then it began to collapse. Countless gravel fell from the surroundings. Zhuowen didn't stay any longer and rushed out of the cave. The moment he left the cave collapsed. Phew, it seems I can only pull the bowstring to 3/4 of its length. Otherwise, I will easily be injured by the backlash. Zhuowen swallowed a healing pill and suppressed the injuries in his body in time. His eyes were full of fear. He knew that it was too early for him to fully draw the bowstring. Of course, if he forced himself to do so, the only result would be that he would be seriously injured. "Brother Zhuo, you're out." A voice attracted Zhuowen's attention. Zhuowen raised his head and saw Crepe Star slowly flying over from the sky. At this moment, Crepe Star's figure was slightly battered and exhausted. Zhuowen could tell at a glance that Crepe Star should have just advanced not long ago. The aura on his body was rather chaotic, but it was very powerful. It was much more powerful than before. "Brother Crepe Star, congratulations on your successful advancement." Zhuowen congratulated. Crepe Star couldn't help but laugh and said, "This is all thanks to Brother Zhuo's Taishian creation spirit pills. This time, I've advanced just in time to get those 5 Taishian creation spirit pills." Fortunately, Brother Joie, you insisted on giving those 5 Taishian creation spirit pills to me. Otherwise, I might have failed this time. Zhuowen smiled and didn't say anything. He didn't talk too much about the Taishian creation spirit pills. Instead, he changed the topic and said, Brother Crepestar, after you got the inheritance of the undying bird, you should know how to leave this undying bird purgatory, right? How should we leave next? Well, about leaving the undying bird purgatory, the undying bird has already made plans. The undying bird's body is trapped here by the power of the phoenix and can't escape at all. So it used the inheritance to lure the right person here. After the undying bird took over the body, it used the body of the inheritor to leave the undying bird purgatory. As for the place to leave, the undying bird has already prepared it. It's in the outer layer of the black heart sea of fire. In the depths, there is a teleportation formation. The undying bird secretly used its blood essence to set it up a long time ago when it was suppressed, Crepestar said. Good. Then let's go to the outer layer now. Zhuowen nodded, and the two of them left this place. Soon, they left Crepestar's cave residence. When Zhuowen came to the Flame Avenue again, he finally knew why the Phoenix had specially set up such a flame avenue here. Its purpose should be to suppress the undying bird's body. Moreover, it had also extracted a part of the undying bird's divine soul to guard the entrance of the inner layer, separating the divine soul and the body with the Flame Avenue. It was almost impossible for the undying bird to leave the undying bird purgatory. The only way was to seize someone's body. Unfortunately, the undying bird had chosen the wrong person. It dared to seize Zhuowen's body, which was seeking its own death. If the two of them wanted to go to the Black Heart Sea of Fire, they had to pass through the outer layer of the canyon gathering place. And even if it wasn't on the way, Zhuowen planned to go to the outer layer of the canyon gathering place. He had learned from Crepestar that there were many powerful experts among the prisoners in the undying bird purgatory. Among them, there were 7 experts who were sky-reaching masters. Among the 7 sky-reaching masters, one was at the middle stage of sky-reaching masters, while the other 6 were slightly weaker. They were all at the early stage of sky-reaching masters. This was a very powerful force. He planned to release all the prisoners in the undying bird purgatory and then make trouble for the Phoenix people. When Zhuowen and Crepestar arrived at the outer layer of the canyon, they immediately found that the canyon was much more heavily guarded than before. The two of them were stopped by 2 guards at the entrance of the canyon. If the two of you want to enter, you have to pay 500 Heavenly Law origin crystals. The 2 guards could clearly feel the powerful aura emitted by Zhuowen and Crepestar, so they didn't dare to go too far. Their tone was rather gentle. When I entered this canyon before, there was no such thing, right? Why do I have to pay Heavenly Law origin crystals now? Zhuowen frowned. Chapter 3287. Suayin Zhuowen nodded when he heard that. After paying 1,000 Heavenly Law origin crystals, he entered the valley with the Purple Star Sovereign. He had been to this canyon before and knew that although it was not small, it would definitely become crowded with the experts of the inner layer. Zhuowen also knew that the factions in the canyon would be reshuffled. For example, the Tianluo sect, Blood Rock sect, and Jadenet sect that originally existed in the canyon would definitely be wiped out by the experts of the inner layer. As Zhuowen had expected, after he entered the open space in the depths of the canyon, he immediately discovered that there were clearly many more people in the open space than before. Zhuowen also found that the empty space was clearly divided into 3 areas before, but there was no such difference now. After entering the empty space, Zhuowen asked around and found out that the Tianluo sect, Blood Rock sect, and Jadenet sect had been destroyed. The one in charge of this empty space was a foreign race called Suayin. Zhuowen was not unfamiliar with Suayin. Before leaving the inner layer, the Purple Star Sovereign had introduced him to Suayin. Suayin could be considered the strongest expert aside from the Purple Star Sovereign. Among the 7 heaven-piercing masters, he was the only intermediate heaven-piercing master. Suddenly, Zhuowen, who was strolling in the empty space, stopped in his tracks. The purple star sovereign almost bumped into Zhuowen. He also stopped in his tracks and looked at Zhuowen in confusion. He asked, "Brother Zhuo, why did you suddenly stop?" "I suddenly saw an acquaintance." Zhuowen looked straight ahead as a faint smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. At the end of the street where his gaze landed, a snake-faced man with his hands behind his back walked over with an arrogant expression. Behind the snake-faced man was a group of armored soldiers. Wherever this army passed, the foreign races on the street would hurriedly make way for them. Their eyes were filled with fear, not daring to look at the snake-faced man. It was obvious that the snake-faced man had a high prestige here. Zhuowen stood in the middle of the street without dodging. He just looked at the snake-faced man in front of him. At this moment, the snake-faced man was already close to Zhuowen. He was very satisfied with the performance of the other foreign races on the street. He liked to enjoy this feeling of being high and mighty. For the first time, he felt that leaving the inner layer was such a wonderful thing. Of course, while he was floating in the air, he couldn't help but remember the young man from the devouring clan he had met on the fire path. Thinking of this, the snake-faced man's face became gloomy, but soon recovered. That young man from the devouring clan was indeed formidable. However, in his opinion, no matter how strong that young man from the devouring clan was, he wouldn't be as strong as Lord Suoingda. Lord Suoingda was a middle-stage connecting Heaven Lord, and he had been lucky enough to break through from half-step connecting Heaven Lord to early-stage connecting Heaven Lord. It was precisely because he had become the master of Sky Piercer that he had such a high status. After the young man from the devouring clan left the room, he would come here. At that time, he would show him Master Suoingda's intimidation. "Since you dared to humiliate me back then, you must pay a corresponding price," the snake-faced man muttered in a low voice as he walked. "Oh, you're talking about me?" Suddenly, a chuckle came from in front of the snake-faced man. The snake-faced man didn't even look in front of him. He pointed his nose at Zhuowen and said coldly, "Who do you think you are? Don't you know I'm crossing the street? Get the hell out of here." As soon as the snake-faced man finished speaking, he was ruthlessly slapped in the face. The snake-faced man was directly slapped to the ground. The snake-faced man roared angrily. Just as he was about to turn around and get up, a large foot suddenly stepped on his face and fiercely stomped on it. The snake-faced man's eyes were filled with terror. Just now, he had used all of his strength, but he was still trampled down. Now, he couldn't even raise his head. The strength of this foot was too great, as if a huge mountain was crushing down on his head. "It seems like you haven't learned the lesson I taught you last time." The cold voice came. The snake-faced man's eyes widened. He was too familiar with this voice. It was the young man from the devouring clan. He was really unlucky for 8 lifetimes. As soon as he thought of this guy, he met him. Moreover, this guy had stomped on his head in front of so many people. He didn't have any face left. On the street, everyone gawked and dropped their jaws, looking at Zhuowen with astonishment. They couldn't figure out the identity of this young man who had suddenly appeared. However, since he could stomp the snake-faced man on the ground and the latter couldn't get up, they knew that this strange young man wasn't someone to be trifled with. Moreover, his strength was definitely above the snake-faced man's. The troops behind the snake-faced man were afraid. They didn't dare to come forward to rescue the snake-faced man. "Senior, it's my fault. I blocked your way. I hope you won't mind this lowly one's offense. Forgive this junior." The snake-faced man hurried to beg for mercy. He had seen Zhuowen's ruthlessness. He was really afraid that this young man in front of him could kill him easily. If that happened, he would die in vain. "I can spare you, but take me to see Suoingda," Zhuowen said indifferently. The snake-faced man was startled. He didn't expect that Zhuowen would actually want to see Suoingda. "Did you hear me?" Zhuowen frowned and said with some displeasure, I know. "Senior, can you lift your foot so that this junior can lead the way for you?" The snake-faced man said somewhat sullenly. Zhuowen nodded and lifted his foot. The snake-faced man hurriedly stood up. Only then did he see Zhuowen clearly in front of him. At the same time, the snake-faced man also saw Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign standing beside Zhuowen. His pupils couldn't help but shrink. "Lord Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign?" the snake-faced man asked with some uncertainty. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign said indifferently, "Take us to see Suo Ingda. We have something to discuss with him." The moment he saw Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign, the last trace of hope in the snake-faced man's heart disappeared. Even Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign was standing beside this young man. He somewhat doubted whether Suo Ingda could deal with Zhuowen. He knew that when Suo Ingda was in the inner layer, he was defeated by Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign. This Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign was truly unfathomable and very powerful. The snake-faced man didn't dare to be negligent in the slightest. He hurriedly led Zhuowen and Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign to the center of the open space, the most luxurious pavilion. The snake-faced man's status wasn't low. When he entered the pavilion, he was basically unimpeded. This was a large conference hall with many solid wood chairs. In the conference hall, there were already 7 people sitting. At the head of the table was a middle-aged man with a dignified expression. Chapter 3288. Collapse of talks. The moment he saw the middle-aged man sitting at the head, Zhuowen knew that this middle-aged man should be Suo Ingda. Seeing how well-prepared Suo Ingda and the others were, Zhuowen knew that the snake-faced man should have informed Suo Ingda in advance. The moment Zhuowen and Crepe Myrtle Star entered the hall, Suo Ingda, who was sitting at the head, stood up and greeted them with a warm smile. However, Suo Ingda directly ignored Zhuowen, who was walking in front of him, and went to the Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign behind him. He shook hands with the Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign. "Brother Crepe Myrtle, you finally left the inner area. Now we are only waiting for you. Fortunately, you are here." Suo Ingda laughed. Zhuowen stood to the side and looked indifferently at Suo Ingda, who ignored him. He was not angry. He knew very well that this was Suo Ingda's idea. He was a stranger to Suo Ingda, while Crepe Myrtle Star was an expert who once defeated him. Naturally, Suo Ingda's attitude towards Crepe Myrtle Star was different from his. If it were anyone else, they would have the same attitude. However, Suo Ingda completely ignored Zhuowen. This approach was a bit excessive, but Zhuowen did not care too much. Crepe Myrtle Star smiled faintly and said, "Brother Suo is too polite. I have been in seclusion in my cave mansion, so I didn't know that the undying bird's soul at the entrance to the inner area had disappeared. Otherwise, I would have come out long ago." At this point, Crepe Myrtle Star pointed at Zhuowen and said, "Brother, so this is Zhuowen. He's my best friend. He's very powerful. Even I feel ashamed of my inferiority." Suo Ingda just smiled and casually cupped his hands toward Zhuowen. Then, he enthusiastically greeted Crepe Myrtle Star. In Suo Ingda's eyes, Zhuowen's aura was too weak. He only had the aura of a Genesis Lord. Therefore, he treated Crepe Myrtle Star's words as an exaggeration. Crepe Myrtle Star wanted to continue introducing Zhuowen to Suo Ingda, but Zhuowen stopped him with a look. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign had no choice but to give up and was enthusiastically led by Suo Ingda to the second seat next to the head seat. Zhuowen just casually found an empty seat and sat beside the snake-faced man. The snake-faced man originally wanted to remind Suo Ingda of Zhuowen's strength, but seeing Suo Ingda greeting Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch so enthusiastically, he knew that now was not the time to remind Suo Ingda. Otherwise, it would easily cause Suo Ingda's displeasure. "Brother Ziwei, we finally left that damn place in the inner layer and found such a good place in the outer layer. We plan to develop our forces here. In the future, when our forces are strong enough, we can join forces and see if we can force our way out of this undying bird purgatory. Now, my idea is very simple. I plan to let Brother Ziwei join my force, develop our force together, and find a way to leave this place." "What do you think, Brother Ziwei?" Suo Ingda said with a smile. Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign said indifferently, "Suo Ingda, you mean to say that you want me to be your subordinate and listen to your orders?" Suo Ingda said with a smile. That's not it. Brother Z-Way, you are so strong. I can see it with my own eyes. I established the Canyon Sect, and I just became the sect master. I plan to make you the vice sect master of the Canyon Sect. Of course, you don't need to listen to my orders at all. You are on equal footing with me. Oh, since we are on equal footing, why can't I be the sect master and you be the vice sect master? Crepe Myrtle Star, Sovereign, said mockingly. Suo Ingda was silent for a moment, his expression somewhat ugly, and said, Brother Z-Way, this Canyon Sect was established by me after all. It's only right for me to be the sect master. If Brother Z-Way is not satisfied, I won't force you to join us. Crepe Myrtle Star, Sovereign glanced at Zhuowen and said indifferently, Actually, I'm not interested in joining your so-called Canyon Sect. The reason I'm here is mainly to tell all of you one thing. What is it? Suo Ingda asked subconsciously. I know how to leave the immortal bird purgatory. Crepe Myrtle Star, Sovereign said. As soon as these words were spoken, the atmosphere in the hall immediately quieted down, and then it quickly became warm. Suo Ingda also said excitedly, Brother Z-Way, you actually know how to leave the immortal bird purgatory. You are truly our great benefactor. To actually be willing to provide us with such information, we are truly grateful. Crepe Myrtle Star, Sovereign frowned and said, When did I say that I would provide you with such information for free? The atmosphere in the hall suddenly became somewhat gloomy. Suo Ingda calmed down and said apologetically, Brother Z-Way, I'm really sorry. I was too excited. Tell us, what do you need to tell us the location of the passage to leave the immortal bird purgatory? Suo Ingda was very smart. He knew that since Crepe Myrtle Star, Sovereign knew the passage to leave the immortal bird purgatory, he did not leave the immortal bird purgatory immediately. Instead, he came here. What I want you to do is very simple. I want you to leave the immortal bird purgatory, and you must swear that after leaving the immortal bird purgatory, you will not escape from the Phoenix people. Instead, you will cause trouble for the Phoenix people. Each of you must kill 100 Phoenix people before you can leave the Phoenix people. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving this place. Crepe Myrtle Star, Sovereign said indifferently. Instantly, the entire hall fell into a deathly silence. Suo Ingda and the others' faces stiffened, and their expressions were very unnatural. Was Crepe Myrtle Star, Sovereign crazy? They were all prisoners who had been captured by the Phoenix people into the immortal bird purgatory. They knew how terrifying the Phoenix people were. After leaving the immortal bird purgatory, this guy actually planned to cause trouble for the Phoenix people. Did he really think that he was invincible? Of course, if you are not willing, I will not force you. Naturally, you will not be able to leave the immortal bird purgatory. Crepe Myrtle Star, Sovereign said with a faint smile. Suo Ingda and the others did not speak, and the atmosphere in the entire hall became very quiet and strange. Brother Crepe Myrtle, I think you also know how powerful the Phoenix people are. If you want us to cause trouble for the Phoenix people, you are asking us to court death. I can't agree to this. Suo Ingda said coldly. The rest of the people present also voiced their objections. Crepe Myrtle Star, Sovereign stood up and said, In that case, we have nothing to talk about. I will spread the news in this canyon. If anyone is willing, they will naturally agree. Brother Zhuo, let's go. After saying that, Crepe Myrtle Star, Sovereign stood up and strode towards the door. Wait. Suo Ingda stomped his right foot and blocked Crepe Myrtle Star, Sovereign's path. Brother Suo, have you thought it through? Crepe Myrtle Star, Sovereign stopped and said, Hee. Crepe Myrtle Star, Sovereign, you are too arrogant. Do you think that I, Suo Ingda, am afraid of you just because you defeated me? Today, all the experts of the inner layer are gathered here. You can defeat me, but can you defeat our joint forces? Suo Ingda sneered. After Suo Ingda finished speaking, the 6 people in the hall all stood up. Their eyes were filled with killing intent as they stared at Crepe Myrtle Star, Sovereign. Chapter 3289. That arrangement, the snake-faced man's eyes flickered as he hesitated. He knew how powerful Zhuowen and Crepe Myrtle Star were. He doubted whether the people in the hall could really keep Crepe Myrtle Star and Zhuowen here. If you don't want to be beaten up, you'd better sit here and don't move. Just as the snake-faced man was hesitating, Zhuowen, who was sitting beside him, said in a low voice. The snake-faced man glanced at Zhuowen, his eyes full of fear. In the end, he did not have the courage to stand up. Crepe Myrtle Star stopped at the entrance of the hall and looked calmly at the people in the hall who stood up. He laughed. Crepe Myrtle Star, you're about to die. How can you still laugh? Suoingda could not help but mock. Hee hee, I'm laughing because you're all too ridiculous. Suoingda, you're just a defeated opponent. The others in the hall are just a mob. Are you sure you want to stop me? Crepe Myrtle Star said disdainfully. Humph, you'll know soon enough whether we're a mob or not. Suoingda snorted coldly and stomped his right foot. The aura of a middle-stage Tongtian lord exploded as he threw a punch at Crepe Myrtle Star. Slap! However, the moment Suoingda approached Zhuowen, he was slapped to the ground. Then, Crepe Myrtle Star stomped on his chest, suppressing him. At the same time, an extremely terrifying aura erupted from Crepe Myrtle Star's body. The moment this aura appeared in the hall, the entire hall shook violently. An unprecedented pressure crushed everyone in the hall, causing them to involuntarily kneel on the ground. Bang! The snake-faced man could not resist this terrifying pressure. The chair under his but cracked, and he sat on the ground. He trembled as he said, Tong Tian, Lord Late Stage? Among those present, only Zhuowen was as calm as still water. Moreover, he was still sitting cross-legged as he tasted the tea on the tea table to his right. Suoingda was stunned and did not dare to move. He looked regretful. He did not expect Crepe Myrtle Star to have advanced. Back when Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch had yet to advance, he had already been defeated by the former. Now that Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign had advanced, the gap between them had widened. He was no different from an ant. No wonder Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign did not take him seriously at all. Do you still want to stop me? Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign asked calmly. Suoingda hurriedly said, Brother Ziwei, it was a misunderstanding just now. We won't dare again. Do you think it's enough just to say that you don't dare? You only have two choices now. The first is to swear an oath to the heavenly Tao to leave the Phoenix Purgatory and come with us to wreak havoc on the Phoenix people. The second is to die. Zhuowen stood up and walked over to Crepe Myrtle Star. What? Who do you think you are? You actually forced us to cause a ruckus among the Phoenix people. Brother Crepe Myrtle hasn't said anything yet. So what are you saying? Suoingda looked coldly at Zhuowen and said with some disdain. The atmosphere in the hall eased up. Suoingda ignored the seriousness of his injuries and hurriedly stood up. He came in front of Zhuowen and asked enthusiastically, You should first swear a heavenly Tao oath. As for your cultivation, I'll naturally help you raise it. Why are you in such a hurry? Zhuowen said indifferently. Suoingda immediately lost his temper and hurriedly swore a heavenly Tao oath in front of Zhuowen. The others followed suit one after another. Suoingda, next I want you to issue an order to all the foreign races in the canyon. Tell them that I, Zhuowen, am a heaven-piercing alchemist and can refine divine pills that can help their cultivation advance further. Moreover, I know the exit to the Phoenix Purgatory. If they're willing to follow me for a short period of time and cause trouble for the Phoenix people and swear a heavenly Tao oath, I, Zhuowen, will refine the corresponding divine pills for them to raise their cultivation and even let them out. Of course, we won't force those who don't agree. Chapter 3290. Brewing in the following period of time, the many foreign races in the canyon of the undying bird purgatory were abnormally excited. This was because they had received news that the new master of the canyon was a heaven-level alchemist who could refine heaven-level divine pills. Moreover, this mysterious new master was said to know the way to leave the undying bird purgatory. This mysterious new master had spread the word that as long as they agreed to follow him to cause trouble for the Phoenix people after leaving the undying bird purgatory, he would refine divine pills that could raise their cultivation and bring them out of the undying bird purgatory. Once this news came out, most of the foreign races in the canyon agreed without hesitation. This kind of result was out of Zhuowen's expectations. He thought that most of the foreign races in the canyon were selfish and value their own lives very much. They should have weighed his conditions for a long time. But now he was wrong. The foreign races in the canyon agreed too quickly. This was not Zhuowen's fault. After all, he had stayed in the undying bird purgatory for too short a time. However, these foreign races had stayed for at least 1,000 years, or even tens of thousands of years. If they were to cultivate for such a long time, it would be fine. At most, they would be a little bored. However, in the undying bird purgatory, this kind of dangerous place that was filled with endless black flames at any time, the heavenly energy was very thin. Even cultivating was very difficult. Staying in this kind of place for a few years was already torturous, let alone tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years. After all, the environment in the undying bird purgatory was not a place filled with terrifying heavenly energy like the undying bird's nest. The snake-faced man's collection of medicinal ingredients was also very smooth. With Zhuo Wen's conditions, many of the foreign races in the canyon rushed to hand over all the medicinal ingredients on their bodies, just so that after Zhuo Wen refined the divine pellets, they would be able to get more. In a short 3 days, the snake-faced man had given all the medicinal ingredients he had collected to Zhuowen. What surprised Zhuowen was that the amount of medicinal ingredients he had collected was much more than he had planned. After the snake-faced man handed the medicinal ingredients to Zhuowen, he handed the corresponding name list to Zhuowen. The names of the various foreign races were clearly written on the list, and the amount of medicinal herbs they had donated was clearly listed behind each name. Zhuowen glanced at the snake-faced man. Although this guy bullied the weak and feared the strong, he was meticulous in his work. Well done. This is your reward. Zhuowen took out a divine pill and threw it to the snake-faced man. The snake-faced man subconsciously took the elixir. But the moment he saw the elixir, his pupils shrank and he almost cried out. Supreme Harmony Spiritual Energy Pill? I'm not dreaming, am I? Grandmaster Zhuo, why don't you just give me this divine pill? Don't you need anything else in exchange? The snake-faced man looked at Zhuowen nervously, afraid that Zhuowen would go back on his word. The main effect of the Supreme Harmony Spiritual Energy Pill was to help cultivators in the early stage of the Heaven Ascension Master to the middle stage of the Heaven Ascension Master. This divine pill was a divine pill that could only be found by chance in the primitive heaven realm. Moreover, this divine pill was too important to a cultivator in the early stage of the Heaven Ascension Master. Zhuowen smiled faintly and said, "It's just a Supreme Harmony Spiritual Energy Pill. If you can do what I ask you to do, you'll have a chance to get even better divine pills." Hearing this, the snake-faced man was excited. He looked at Zhuowen with reverence. Now, the snake-faced man felt more and more that Zhuowen was unfathomable. At the same time, he also had a plan in his heart. If he could follow such an expert, it might be a very wise choice. Okay, you can go now. For the next period of time, I need to go into seclusion to refine pills. Zhuowen said indifferently. The snake-faced man did not dare to be negligent. He bowed to Zhuowen and slowly retreated. After the snake-faced man left, Zhuowen set up a powerful restriction around the area. A wry smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. There were nearly 10,000 alien tribes in the canyon. In other words, he had to take out at least 10,000 divine pills. Of course, most of the divine pills were not of high grade. With Zhuowen's level, he could refine them easily. However, even so, Zhuowen would need a lot of time to refine all of them. Zhuowen took a deep breath and stopped thinking about it. Instead, he took out the imperial pill furnace and planned to start refining the simple divine pills. Time passed by minute. In the blink of an eye, several months had passed. Many alien tribes in the canyon were waiting anxiously. Purple Star's sovereign stood outside Zhuowen's place of seclusion. He looked a little worried. After the snake-faced man handed over the list, he also took a copy. He knew how many divine pills Zhuowen needed to refine for this seclusion. Purple Star Sovereign was a little worried that Zhuowen's body could not take so many divine pills at once. Creak! Suddenly, the door in front of him opened. Zhuowen slowly walked out of the room, looking tired. "Brother Zhuo, are you all right?" Purple Star Sovereign asked. Zhuowen shook his head and said, "I'm fine. I'm just a little tired." With that, Zhuowen took out a spirit ring and handed it to Purple Star Sovereign. "Brother Purple Star Sovereign, this spirit ring contains all the divine pills I have refined during this period of time. Not a single one is missing. Help me distribute them according to the list. Before you distribute them, make sure you know who is on the list. Don't try to fish in troubled waters. I need to go back and cultivate for a while. I won't go out with you." After saying that, Zhuowen re-entered the room. In the past few months, Zhuowen had been refining divine pills day and night. His mind was almost exhausted. He was too tired. He had to have a good rest. Seeing Zhuowen re-enter the room, Purple Star Sovereign did not disturb him. Instead, he took the spirit ring and left the place. Zhuowen returned to his room and immediately fell asleep. His mental exhaustion was too terrifying. Other than sleeping, it was impossible to recover by meditating. Zhuowen slept for 10 days and 10 nights before finally waking up. When he opened the door, he found Purple Star Sovereign, Suo Ingda, the snake-faced man, and the other experts in the canyon standing outside his door. When they saw Zhuowen open the door, they all revealed relaxed expressions. "What's wrong? Why are all of you standing outside my door?" Zhuowen asked in surprise. Suo Ingda stepped forward respectfully and said, "Master Zhuo, it's actually like this. We're stuck on the issue of when to leave the undying bird purgatory. We can't make up our minds. So, I've specially come to ask for your opinion. None of you have consumed the divine pills yet, right?" Zhuowen asked with a frown. "Yes, because we have consumed the divine pills. We have to start a period of seclusion. At that time, we're not sure when we will come out of seclusion, so we plan to first set the time to leave the undying bird purgatory before deciding to go into seclusion," Suo Ingda said with a flattering smile. Chapter 3291. The plan. Suo Ingda and the others hesitated for a while before agreeing with Zhuowen. They cupped their hands at Zhuowen and left one after another, intending to go into seclusion to break through. After everyone left, Zhuowen looked at Crepe Myrtle Star and said in a deep voice, "Brother Crepe Myrtle, how many people can a teleportation array in the Black Heart Sea of Flames transport?" Crepe Myrtle Star shook his head and said, "Actually, I'm not sure how many people the teleportation array can transport, because I only know about it from the inheritance of the undying bird, and the information is incomplete." "Do you know the exact location?" Zhuowen asked. "I do know that." "Brother Zhuo, are you going to explore the place yourself?" Crepe Myrtle Star asked in surprise. "Yes. We don't know whether the teleportation array is still there or not. I'm going there now to confirm it. And you know that if we really want to cause trouble for the Phoenix people, we can't just shout a few slogans and rush in with passion. We must have a careful plan. Otherwise, the people of the undying bird purgatory are not enough," Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Crepe Myrtle Star nodded. Zhuowen was right. The Phoenix people were not simple. Back then, the reason why Zhuowen had been able to barge into the Phoenix clan so easily was because he had lured away the main powerhouses of the Phoenix clan. Otherwise, he would not have been able to break into the Phoenix people alone against the 12 fire gods, led by the 2 Xuanhua guardians. Of course, now that his Panga's sacred body had advanced again, Zhuowen was not afraid of the 2 Xuanhua guardians working together. At the same time, Zhuowen was mainly afraid of the mysterious Phoenix Master of the Phoenix people. Generally speaking, the Phoenix Master was not among the Phoenix people. However, Crepe Myrtle Star had reminded him that some time ago, before he entered the undying bird purgatory, he heard that the Phoenix Master seemed to be returning. The authenticity of this news was uncertain, but it reminded Zhuowen that the Phoenix people still had the Phoenix Master, who was an even more terrifying expert. If the Phoenix Master really returned to the Phoenix people, then he would have to be careful. After all, this Phoenix Master was an expert above the great clan elder and the two mystical flame protectors. He guessed that she was at least a late-stage Heavenly Master expert. Although Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch had also reached the late stage of Heaven Ascension Master, he had only just advanced. There was still a gap between him and a veteran like the Phoenix Master. He had no choice but to guard against this. Zhuowen was worried that something might happen, so he planned to go to the transmission array to take a look. If possible, he would first use the transmission array to leave, and, after making all the preparations outside, he would teleport everyone in the undying bird purgatory away. Zhuowen told Crepe Myrtle Star his plan in full detail. After hearing this, Crepe Myrtle Star agreed with Zhuowen's plan. After the two of them made their decision, they secretly left the canyon. With their strength, it was too easy for them to leave the canyon without anyone noticing. After leaving the canyon, the two of them quickly rushed in the direction of the Black Heart Sea of Flames. Not long after, the two of them arrived at the Black Heart Sea of Flames that burned with terrifying black flames. Brother Zhua, follow behind me. I can't sense the specific direction inside the Black Heart Sea of Flames, but I have the inheritance of the undying bird, so I can use it to sense it. As Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch spoke, he took the lead and walked in front. The moment Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch entered the Black Heart Sea of Flames, the terrifying black flames that grew endlessly in the Black Heart Sea of Flames slowly separated, forming a spacious path. Zhuowen followed Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch into the Black Heart Sea of Flames, and the surrounding black flames all made way. The two of them walked very quickly and instantly entered the center of the Black Heart Sea of Flames. After about a few hours, Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch stopped. Zhuowen also stopped. He followed Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch's gaze and looked ahead. A few hundred meters ahead, the black flames were extremely dense and terrifying. These black flames constantly swept and gathered together, forming an extremely terrifying black flame storm. Although Zhuowen had never experienced it personally, he could feel how terrifying the power of the black flame storm was. If it weren't for Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch, he wouldn't be so relaxed now. Brother Zhua, the teleportation array should be inside this storm. Crepe Myrtle Star Monarch said as he strode forward and arrived in front of the black flame storm. With a wave of his right hand, the black flame storm dissipated. Zhuowen couldn't help but sigh in his heart. The person who obtained the inheritance of the undying bird had special privileges. But soon, his attention was attracted by the pattern at the location where the dissipated storm was. This pattern was in the shape of a circle, and on the surface of the pattern, pitch-black flames burned. Zhuowen looked at this pattern and could tell that it should be a teleportation array. However, to his disappointment, the structure of this teleportation array was very simple. With his attainments in Array Dao, he could tell at a glance that this teleportation array could only teleport two people. This was already the limit. Moreover, this teleportation array was a one-time use. In other words, the teleportation array would disappear after he used it. Brother Zhua, is there something wrong with this teleportation array? Seeing Zhuowen's troubled expression, Purple Star Sovereign had a bad premonition and could not help but ask. It's a big problem. This transmission array can only be used once, and it can only transport two people at most. Zhuowen sighed. What? What should we do then? Crepe Myrtle Star Sovereign said in shock. It's all right. Brother Ziwei, have you forgotten that I'm also a divine master of divine formations? Zhuowen asked. Hearing this, Crepe Myrtle Star calmed down. Zhuowen, who was standing in front of him, was an array master. He was much more powerful than a half-baked, undying bird. What was there to be worried about? Brother Ziwei, please stand guard for me. I'll modify this teleportation array. After Zhuowen finished speaking, he threw out beast bone array discs and began to modify the teleportation array. In half a day, Zhuowen modified the teleportation array and forcefully upgraded it to the divine master level. Moreover, the teleportation array was much larger than before. The new teleportation array could teleport hundreds of people at a time, and it could teleport hundreds of times. It was enough to teleport all the alien races in the undying bird's purgatory. Moreover, Zhuowen also knew the specific location of the teleportation array through the connection of this teleportation array. Chapter 3292. Wusong Conference in an inconspicuous little hill several million kilometers away from the Phoenix tribe. A streak of white light appeared. But the white light disappeared in a flash, and a figure slowly walked out from the white light. This figure was Zhuowen, who had been sent out from the undying bird purgatory. Zhuowen climbed to the top of the cliff at the edge of the valley and looked into the distance. Looking at the Phoenix people in the distance, his eyes narrowed as they flickered with a cold light. Although he did not find Mu Qinxue in the undying bird purgatory this time, at least he knew where Mu Qinxue was. This time, he had to properly cause trouble for the Phoenix people. He had to let the Phoenix people know that his, Zhuowen's, woman was not easy to touch. Moreover, he urgently needed to know where the Phoenix people's great elder and third elder had taken Mu Qinxue to, and all of this had to start with causing trouble for the Phoenix people. Of course, Zhuowen would not be that reckless. The time was not ripe yet. Just wait and see. The pain Qinxue suffered will be repaid by your people. Zhuowen muttered to himself as he left the valley. Phoenix Blood City, after the incident with Zhuowen, had regained its peace. The only difference was that the original Bloodshed Tea House had been forcefully demolished by the experts of the Phoenix people. Now, the original location of the Bloodshed Tea House was a small restaurant that was not big or small. It was very inconspicuous. Because the news of Zhuowen entering the undying bird purgatory was known by the experts of the Phoenix people, Phoenix Blood City was not heavily guarded and was not heavily guarded. After Zhuowen changed his appearance, it was very easy for him to sneak into Phoenix Blood City. Not long after Zhuowen entered Phoenix Blood City, in front of the street, he saw a figure wearing a black robe that covered his face. That figure glanced at Zhuowen indifferently before turning into a secluded alley. Zhuowen followed him in. The figure stopped and took off the black robe, revealing an appearance that was exactly the same as Zhuowen's before he changed his appearance. You finally come. That undying bird purgatory is really strange. After you entered, the connection between us was actually cut off. This black-robed man was Zhuowen's true body. Back then, his original body was guarding the Green Blood Tea House, controlling the formation to hold back foam bumming, the two guardians of Xuanhua, and a group of experts, creating an opportunity for his clone to break into the Phoenix people. After the formation of the Emerald Blood Tea House was broken, his original body slipped away in advance, keeping a low profile and concealing his tracks. However, after his clone entered the undying bird purgatory, the connection with his original body was completely cut off. It was only after his clone came out of the undying bird purgatory that he learned about his original body situation. It was impossible for them to fight against all the tribes in the primitive heavenly realm. Therefore, the sorcerer tribe finally compromised and sealed the space of the 3 corpses of the sorcerer ancestor in the sorcerer magical pond. Every 100 years, the Sorcerer Song Conference would be held. All the tribes in the primitive heavenly realm were eligible to participate in the selection of the sorcerer ancestor. In the end, 9 people would be chosen to enter the sorcerer magical pond to be baptized by the power of the sorcerer ancestor. Of course, there was a limit to the number of people who could participate in the Sorcerer Song Conference. They had to have a bone age of less than 10,000 years. Otherwise, if those old monsters who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years or even hundreds of thousands of years also participated, there would be no need to compete at all. If it was discovered that there was a foreign tribe with a bone age of more than 10,000 years, they would be killed on the spot by the experts of the sorcerer tribe. The rules of the Sorcerer Song Conference were so strict that the other tribes in the primitive heavenly realm did not dare to disobey. The corpses of the sorcerer ancestor. Zhuowen's eyes lit up. He had to participate in the Sorcerer Song Conference. His Panga's sacred body had reached a bottleneck. Although he had reached the peak of 7 stars, he needed the Sorcerer Ancestor's venomous insect to advance from 7 stars to 8 stars. Moreover, he suspected that it was much more difficult to advance his Pangu's sacred body than before. He was afraid that one Sorcerer Ancestor's venomous insect might not be able to help him advance to 8 stars. However, the Sorcerer tribe had 3 corpses of the Sorcerer Ancestor. Wasn't this made for him? He had to participate in the Sorcerer Song Conference. He asked around and found out that the Sorcerer Song Conference would officially begin in 4 months. In other words, he had to realize his plan of causing havoc in the Phoenix people within 4 months. He was confident that Su'al Ingda and the others would not go into seclusion for more than 3 months after consuming his divine elixir. He still had time. His main concern now was the Phoenix Master of the Phoenix people. She was a big variable. I have to send the Phoenix Master away in advance in 3 months. Otherwise, she will be a bad variable. Chapter 3293. The Shintian Auction House. The Shintian Auction House was a famous auction house in the Eldritch Heaven domain. All the large-scale auctions in the Eldritch Heaven domain were held in the Shintian Auction House. Moreover, the foreign races that entered the Shintian Auction House did not dare to act rashly. Even the 10 great races followed the rules when entering the Shintian Auction House. The reason why the Shintian Auction House was so prestigious was said to be because it had the support of many big clans, including the Sorcerer tribe, behind it. It was very complicated. It was precisely because of the Shintian Auction House's strong background that the people of the 10 great races did not dare to act rashly. Moreover, the Shintian Auction House was very unyielding and did not give face to the large races at all. If anyone committed a crime in the auction house, they would be severely punished. It was because of the Shintian Auction House's business style that many large and small races, as well as some itinerant cultivators, were willing to put their good things in the auction house. This was because they knew that the Shintian Auction House would not casually take their things. Otherwise, the reputation that the Shintian Auction House had built up with great difficulty would be completely destroyed. Today, an uninvited guest came to the Shintian Auction House. This person knocked on the appraisal counter of the auction house and attracted the attention of a young foreign race person at the counter. The young foreign race person looked at the young man in front of him with some displeasure and said coldly, "If you want to auction something, line up at the back." The business of the Shintian Auction House was very good. There was already a long line in front of the appraisal counter. This person walked up to the counter and cut the line, causing the people in the line to be unhappy. There were even a few foreign races who rubbed their fists together as if this person had really cut the line and would not be polite to him. "I have something that you can't appraise. You need to get your manager here," the person said indifferently. The young foreign race person at the counter glared at the young man and said unkindly, "Are you questioning my appraisal ability? Is the thing you have on you a Tao affirmation treasure? Haha, look at how young you are. I think you haven't even reached the Tao affirmation realm yet. How dare you brag in front of me? You're overestimating yourself." The young man helplessly took out a jade bottle and handed it to the young foreign race person. "Try it. See if you can appraise the thing inside." The young man snorted coldly and took the jade bottle. He opened the cork, and a refreshing medicinal fragrance wafted out. All of the foreign races in the front line had intoxicated looks on their faces. The young outsider hurriedly closed the lid and returned the jade bottle to the young man. Only then did he look at the young man in front of him with a grave expression. "Wait a moment. I'll call our supervisor." After the young foreign race finished speaking, he hurriedly entered the inner room. At this moment, all of the foreign races in the group were bewildered. Some of them were even looking at the young man with greed in their eyes. They had all smelled the medicinal fragrance just now. Although they did not know what kind of divine pill it was definitely not a low-level one. The young man turned a blind eye to the surrounding gazes and stood silently in front of the counter, waiting. Not long after, the young man came out from the inner room and respectfully opened the door on the side of the counter, inviting the young man in. Our manager is waiting for you in the inner room. You can go in and talk to him, the young man said respectfully. The young man nodded and entered the inner room. The inner room was not big, but the decorations were extremely luxurious. In the middle of the room, a middle-aged man leaned lazily on a soft chair. When he saw the young man enter, he stood up enthusiastically and shook hands with the young man. This humble servant is the manager of the mysterious sky auction house, Gao's son. This humble servant is Zhuowen, the young man said with a smile. That's right, the young man who came to the mysterious sky auction house was Zhuowen. The reason he dared to use his real name was mainly because the mysterious sky auction house was very far away from the Phoenix people. It almost crossed half of the primitive heaven domain. It took him 7 days to reach this place and travel at full speed. This was not the territory of the Phoenix people. The Phoenix people's arrest warrant for him did not affect this place at all. So it's Brother Zhua. Nice to meet you. Gao's rubbed his hands and said enthusiastically, just now my shop assistant said that you have a divine pill that even she couldn't identify. It's said to be at least a creation-grade divine pill. I wonder if Brother Zhua can let me take a look and have a look? Of course. Zhuowen naturally took out the jade bottle and handed it to Gao Xingao. Sin opened the jade bottle and took out a divine pill. Suddenly, the entire room was filled with a terrifying medicinal power. If Gao's cultivation was not at the Grandmaster realm and forcefully suppressed the medicinal power would have spread outside. Great mystery creation spirit pill? Oh my God, am I seeing things? Gao's abruptly stood up, holding a divine pill in his hand as he danced with excitement. You're not seeing things. This is the great mystery creation spirit pill. I plan to sell this divine pill to the mysterious sky auction house, Zhuowen said with a faint smile. Gao's calmed down. His eyes flickered and he smiled. Brother Zhua, how about this? He took out the Supreme Harmony Spiritual Energy Pill, shook it in front of Gao's eyes, and put it away. Of course, if you violate the rules of your auction house and rob it, I don't mind killing you and then making your actions public. Do you think the people will support me, or you? Zhuowen said indifferently. Gao's trembled and completely surrendered. Although he coveted the profound creation spirit pill, the Supreme Harmony Spiritual Energy Pill that Zhuowen took out was the most useful to him. Brother Zhua, you must be joking. You're so young and promising. I really don't dare to play tricks in front of you. Gao's said with a flattering smile. That had better be the case. There are 2 bottles of profound creation spirit pills in this J bottle. Before the auction, you must do your best to promote it. It's best to promote it to the Phoenix people. The auction will be held in 3 months. Zhuowen said. Gao's eyes flickered, and he quickly agreed with a smile. By the way, does your auction house auction slaves? Zhuowen asked. We're also auctioning off slaves. Brother Zhua, do you want to buy slaves? Gao's asked. This female slave will be auctioned together with the divine pill in 3 months. Zhuowen waved his sleeve and threw out the saintess of the Phoenix people. She is... Gao's was puzzled. The saintess of the Phoenix people, Zhuowen said indifferently. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.